dog, I'm nervous as fuck. This is crazy.
You are? Why?
I'm mad nervous. Yeah.
You
This
kidding
is
me?
yeah, I mean I got the beer. I can't really do hard liquor like that, but got the beer going because yeah, I was surprised, like, oh shit, I'm nervous to do this. But it's
Oh,
cool.
all right. Let me level up. Let me get a little drink going here. All right.
But now where do you live at? I know you're in the city.
I'm in South Philly in the Italian market.
Okay. Very cool. I feel like you've been there for a minute now, right?
Yeah, I've been here for like 8 years.
Good for you.
Yeah,
It's a little different from South Ambler, I imagine.
it is. It's funny. Like I had never really had a desire to go back once I left, and that was part of like me going to Temple was just I love the idea of just kind of being able to get anywhere, especially like these parts of Philly that I've always kind of loved. Mainly food centralized, but just I love being able to get out here on the street and walk around and versus in the suburbs where you have to drive everywhere and all that and
Yeah.
everything kind of happened. Well, before COVID, everything in the suburbs would generally happen at people's houses or but here in the city, there's just a lot of just different things to check out, and I love walking and being, other than work, I never drove
Hmm.
when I was around here prior to COVID. Now I never drive, but
Yeah, you can just like stumble into stuff. It's I feel the same way. Like being in LA, my wife and I were living in Leimert Park for a couple of years, which is like the Harlem of LA. And like, yeah, I'll just go walk the dog and find like, oh, there goes the little farmer's market, and oh, damn, they got some live music at this coffee shop, and it was dope. But yeah, we weren't having that in Ambler too much when we were running around.
uh, did you grow up in? It's funny because like I remember you kind of just all my life
Hmm.
through school, but you were one grade below, right?
Yeah.
So class of '02, and of course always knew your mom from Madison
Hmm.
during my maybe my some of my most troubled years. But because we never had classes together, probably until my senior year when we had TV lab.
That's right.
I feel like that's maybe the only time we actually had to like talk during school time.
Yeah.
So I never really knew a lot about your life outside of that. Your dad was a pilot, and that was
Yeah.
like those were the few things that I really knew. So, but did you grow up in Ambler from the jump?
I did. I did. And a quick sidebar, which the thing I love about this podcast is, which I think you're really onto something, is we all had this idea of who a classmate was when we went to school. I'm like, I've known you since I was in kindergarten at Madison. You know what I mean? Like you've always been there. I remember the WWF magazines and when your action figures to school and shit. And like I remember we both had the Ric Flair one when Ric Flair had the pictures of Elizabeth and Randy Savage was mad. And it was like the lead up to WrestleMania 8. I remember looking at it. We were looking at each
Yeah.
other's magazines and just saying, I remember that shit. Like you were always there. But when I started listening to their podcast, like I ain't know Brad at all, like at all. So which was, and whether it was Eric Coxon or Michael Claiborne, like I'm just like, damn, these are people who I just was around. And I just had no idea what was going on in their lives. So it was really dope to hear that. But of course, I started thinking about my own shit, and like, yeah, I grew up in Ambler, and initially on was it Spring Garden Street, which was like walking distance from like the newsstand that was right there and Candida's.
Yeah.
So that little half a block was like my world for a few years. I remember before I could even count money, I'd go to the newsstand and put the two quarters up on the counter, like, yo, let me get a bag of Skittles. You know what I mean? And I remember the one time they're like, this isn't enough. And I went back. I'm like, Mom, you said it wasn't enough. She's like, no, you need the big ones with the ridges, not the small, smooth ones. These are quarters. I'm like, all right, bet. Big ones with the ridges. I get my Skittles. And then if I wasn't there, I was at Candida's getting water ice and playing Ninja Turtles. You know what I mean? And like with my sister, and maybe Theo Thompson would be out there and Justin Newman. And like, it was, I loved being just, and I feel like Ambler proper. And at that time, I don't know if you knew this, but I was held back. I was held back in kindergarten. You fucking believe it. How do you fail kindergarten? But
It
I
happens.
missed my my first stint at kindergarten was at Bluebell,
Hmm.
and I was doing it was like a half day kind of kindergarten,
Yeah.
which I think is what fucked me up because I'm like, this is a half day. This isn't real school. I don't got to do this shit. So I never really got into that groove of like, okay, this is what it is. I got to go to school. I could, every day I was like, do I have to go back there? Really? And, but yeah, I was at Bluebell, and who was in my class? I actually thought about this beforehand, like Stephanie Schneck, the boy Justin, who played on Wissahicon's basketball team. He was in your grade. He always had like a knee brace on.
Hammond.
Yeah, Justin, and who else? My best friend was Fraser Reichner.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my guy. And it was weird because then I'd be in high school and I'd see his mom when I was going inside. She'd be like, Hank, and I'd stop down to talk to her mom. I hadn't seen her in years, but that's how close we were back then. Who else? Tara Carlin. Yeah, so and then I go to Madison after that, and it's just like, all right, got to do this kindergarten shit over again.
Start over.
And it was all day, so I got into that groove, and yeah, then we had the whole Madison Avenue run. And it's pretty cool getting to high school and being around Madison Avenue people, because you always had this like, you'll do this nod kind of thing, like, all right, yeah, I see you, Madison Avenue. Even people that you stop talking to, or how you go different directions, there's still that mutual respect because you're from Madison Avenue.
Yeah, it's funny. I always had that. I went both ways. One, I had this just hatred for the fact that so many people knew me from the time I was 5, because I felt like, when you have conflict with people, that doesn't go away. No matter what it is, 100%. No matter what anyone's going through, you kind of remember everything about that, or at least I did, remembered everything about that person that I was privy to your entire life. The kid that pooped his pants, the kid that the kid that got kicked out of class, the kid that got beat up in a fight. You remember that all through, and I just hated that idea of not being able to change who you were. But at the same time, that kind of feeling, there were specific times growing up when like you come across people that and you've known for so long, that kind of has like that good feeling of, I don't know, sameness.
Yeah. I mean, I remember meeting up with, I don't even know anybody off the top of my head, but it'd be like if you're in a random class with somebody you haven't seen or haven't talked to in forever, but if you were tight in Madison, we would legit be there, be like, yo, how's your mom doing? Like, cool. Like, your brother get over that thing? Yeah, he all right. And then you kind of go your separate ways. But it's like just that acknowledgement, like, yeah, we know each other.
So one of the things that when I wanted to do this podcast originally was like, I used to think about a lot was what happens to those relationships, those people you were friends with in 2nd, 3rd grade, that all of a sudden by like 7th, 8th, 9th grade, you're not friends with those people anymore. And I guess like everyone's friends, right, when you're in those grades, because you have to give you have the birthday celebration, cupcakes for everybody. Yeah. You generally, like, you're supposed to invite most of the people to your birthday parties outside of school. Valentine's, everyone gets a card in the class. Yeah. But then, like, once you become, 11, that shit all goes away, and it's like, oh, none of these people actually like me when they're not forced to.
It's weird. It's like everything was cool. I mean, I always hated school. I never had a need for school. I couldn't wait for it to be over, but it was manageable for a while. And then you get to 6th grade, started going a little left. It was like, okay, this is still semi-normal, but I don't know what it is about 7th grade, but it's like you come in that first day and it's like they just spray you down with assholiness, and everybody's a fucking asshole. And I'm like, damn, like what happened? It's like everybody's trying to just step on the next person just to lift himself up. It was a weird, 7th grade was weird, dude. And 8th grade wasn't any better. It was like, I had my friends and everything, but I think you're starting to kind of find your lane a little bit. Not really. And certain friends are into things that you're not really into. Like for me, my focus started to shift towards girls a little bit more. My certain crop of friends were still into video games. So it was just I found myself going a different way. But then by 9th grade, everything was divided. Like, it was friends that I did have, they was just kind of like, oh, sorry, can't really roll with you anymore. And you've talked a lot on this podcast just about kind of the racial makeup of the school and how race is a factor in it. And it was very much like a factor for me. And I didn't understand at first, like, why certain friends of mine I wasn't really banging with, and it was mutual. I kind of went my way and they went theirs.
Yeah.
But yeah, because I do know 9th grade was when I started hanging out with predominantly Black people, but all through middle school, it was all white people. Because, I just, like, whatever your pod was, that was your life.
Right.
I mean, your classes, even in elementary school, it was never like a bunch of Black kids in my class. It was always like me and one other person. So that's who you're friends with. But shit just started getting weird. And by ninth grade, it was just like clear to me, like I'm good. Like I'm gonna go hang out with Black people now.
Now, was your middle school friend experience, was that like kids actually going to their house, playing with them outside of school, or was, when you talk about like friends, like especially with the white kids, was that just in the hallways, in class, stuff like that?
A lot of them was in school, and like yeah, I would go to parties and stuff in middle school. And I spent a lot of time with myself, just watching movies. Like I'd go to Movie World on the weekend and just get like two movies, and go to Wawa right there where I know he used to work. I'd get my section. That was it. I'd just be watching movies every weekend, and then just at the random time there'd be like a party to go to, but it wasn't a lot. I went out every weekend, especially in middle school. But for the most part, yeah, it was just me just watching movies. But I know my boy Aubrey lived like basically on the other side of the tracks from me. And so we were always tight, but we wouldn't hang out a lot in middle school, but we'd link up because he's kind of a friend from Madison.
Right.
We ride bikes, see each other, hang out tough for like a week, and then it'd go months again without seeing him. You know what I mean? So yeah, I spent a lot of time to myself just watching movies and TV shows.
Did you have a favorite?
Let's see. Like in middle school, favorite movie, I think Out of Sight. Out of Sight was the big one. That was the one where I was just like, I don't know what this is, but I want to do this for a living.
Out of Sight, is that George Clooney, Jennifer Lopez?
George Clooney's J Lo.
Wow.
Yeah, that was the one. That and the movie Scream. Scream was like the first movie where I really noticed dialogue, and it like hit me like, yo, how they make a slasher flick, but it's so funny, and all the pop culture references, and Out of Sight blew my mind because it was just non-linear. And I just remember this one scene with J Lo and this Black woman, and I was like, I don't know who this Black woman is, but she's gonna be a star. Like she is stealing this scene. And it was Viola Davis.
Wow.
Nobody knew who she was then, but that little 5-minute scene, I'm like, God damn, that was brilliant.
Prior to that, did you want to do or be anything else? Was there another strong pull for you just as a kid?
No.
Pie in the sky, wanted to be an athlete, anything like that?
No, I mean, yeah, everybody wanna hoop.
Like
I like ball, but I knew that wasn't gonna be a lane for me. I was never the star athlete, not anywhere close to it. So I'm like, that ain't it. All I ever really cared about was watching movies. That's I went back and found that old Shady Grove kind of yearbook that we had, and I looked at, we had to list like what we wanted to be when we grew up, and I put movie critic. So
wow.
it was always movie related. I just didn't know what. I never thought that what I'm doing now was even possible. Like coming from Ambler, and we just didn't know anybody who was in that realm, and the only frame of reference we really had was, or two people, were Brandon Deese, and then Mark Pinchotti. And Brandon was making short films, TV shows. That senior class show, I still think about him and amazed that an 18-year-old pulled that off. And at the time, I'm looking at that like, oh, I'm never going to be that. I mean, that's not me, at least not right now. So I just never thought that it was a possibility. But I always loved writing too, and always did well with English. And shout out to Miss McCracken. I loved the interview with her. But she was a big part of me just thinking like, well, maybe writing, maybe that's a lane for me.
Did you ever dabble? I mean, you were watching movies, but so for me, same, right? It was some sort of, I didn't know that was a job that you could go for or do growing up young, but I wanted to be in entertainment of some sort, right? So when I was like 10, I started going to modeling school in Philly.
I remember you talking about that. I was cracking up when you said that.
And doing like runway stuff, but also acting, and go to like a convention where you compete against kids your own age, and like you read scripts and compete, right? And I win that, and I'm going to auditions in New York to be on like all that, and I don't get any of them, right? But and then I'm doing the school plays, the whole time thinking this is what you do, you act. So I'm doing the school plays in middle school, and then and the musicals and high school, going on and doing the musicals. Were you attempting at any point growing up, just as a kid? And I went to like drama school or drama camp in the summer at Temple Ambler for a couple of years. Did you at any point like do anything in entertainment growing up? Did you try and dip your toe into anything?
Nothing. Like at all, dude. Like I'm listening to you say this, I'm like, God damn, I wish I would have had a conversation with you back then, because now looking back, yeah, I wish I would have gone to like a performing arts school or something. You know what I mean? Or just explored that a little bit more. I mean, everything works out how it's supposed to, but yeah, I wish I would have just had that confidence or push to to explore that, at least to know that it was an option. It wasn't even a thought of mine, you know? Like I would write like little short films, like little kind of slasher things. I told you, because off of Scream, I started just writing little horror shorts that me and my cousins were going to shoot, but that never materialized. But I was writing the scripts, and my grandfather let me hold his camera, so we just started shooting shit. But that's about as far as it got, you know.
Well, that's not, see, I never even had a camera growing up, so that wasn't like, I was always just I had audio recording, so like that would be my only expression of art, like at home, to be able to do stuff. Um, at what point did you realize that there was a career that could be had somehow in, well, you said that you were very good, or you were drawn to like writing, English was more of your thing. Was that, at what point does that start to, because that's what you went to college for, right?
Yeah, I was an English major, and I got my graduate degree in that. And the undergraduate was like film and media studies. So I was still kind of flirting, you know what I mean, with
Okay.
Hollywood and everything. And but my master's was in teaching and writing of literature, and I was working at a tax publication, like reporting on tax news, because I figured I like writing journalism. You know, that feels practical. I was always trying to find practical ways of writing, you know, and I was just getting my grad degree in English with teaching, because that's what you do with an English degree, you teach, you know. So I was working at this tax publication with dreams of getting to the Washington Post, you know, because I was living in the DC area. And I realized, you know what, this shit is boring. Like it's fucking tax news. It's boring as hell. And I don't think the post would be that much better if I even get there, you know? And I was finishing up my degree, and I'd had a terrible breakup with my college girlfriend. And, you know, this is the one I thought was going to be it. You know, we're kind of planning our lives together, and it ended terribly. And I wasn't getting over it. It was a couple of years. I'm like, I need to get the hell out of this area, because this ain't working. And I had been writing scripts as a hobby up to that point, but not really. You know, I was like writing them in a Word document. I had like script writing for dummies next to me. It was more of a pipe dream. Um, but one day I was watching The Office, and that was my favorite show at the time. And I was just like, I can do this shit. Why can't I just go write for a living, you know? And what really did it, I had like this, I bought like The Office season 4 collector's edition DVD
Yeah.
case, which was like a Dunder Mifflin box. It had like a Dwight Schrute bobblehead, which is sitting right here with my Dundie Award. And but it had like this mini script of like the dinner party episode from season 4. And I remember like flipping through it. And that was really the moment. That's when I was like, oh, this is a job. Like this is something I can go do. And I had been reading scripts online, like through simplyscripts.com, but something about holding that script in my hand, I was just like, man, fuck it. I can just go do this. So after I got my degree, I quit my job, packed my car, and just drove to LA. You know, and I had been visiting LA the past few years. Like I had to go there for work because I was reporting on a tax conference in Anaheim, and stayed with Brandon for a couple of days, and like went to Rock the Bells and shit, and saw like Mos Def and Nas, which was amazing, you know,
Yeah.
and went back again after I had this epiphany, went back in like January of 2010 with the idea like, okay, if I like it, I'm going to move here. And I loved it. I mean, so I was like, that's it. I spent the rest of 2010 finishing up my degree, had a ball that summer, just really going all out on the East Coast just because I knew I was about to leave. And then I drove to LA in like that September and lived with Brandon for like a month or two, and then got my own spot in Glendale and just started grinding, you know?
Hmm. Um, there's so much in that I want to get back to.
I know I was going fast.
If I could go back to high school,
Yeah, let's take it
did
back.
you um did you think that like writing was a, like at what point did you think that that could be your job, or you thought you could go to college for writing or English or communications, or when did you start zeroing in on that, or were you zeroing in on anything?
I was zeroing in on nothing. I mean, again, I hated school, and I was having a good time. Like not so much junior year, but senior year, me and my cousin Dave were having a great time. So it was like school, but classes were getting in the way. I mean, so I wasn't really thinking. I knew I was going to go to college, and I got into college, but just that whole run, I was getting good enough grades to keep my parents off my back, and I just had zero interest in school. And it's funny because now I think about these teachers at pivotal moments telling me and telling the class, like, yo, you need to pay attention to this. I remember Mr. Gallagher, my biology teacher, he was like, look, 30 years ago, I could tell you if you don't do well in school, you're not going to go to college. She's like, I can't say that anymore. He's like, because now there's a fungus tech in Montana that'll take you. It's like, but your goal shouldn't be fungus tech. So I heard that. So I was like, all right, let me kick it up a little notch. I'm not in Montana. So I always did like good enough just to, get into college, get my parents off my back, that kind of thing. But I had no idea what I wanted to do after high school. When I first went to college, it was like communications and advertising, and then I had like a English professor my freshman year who we were just doing like themes and essays and shit. And I was doing really well. And she was like, yo, you need to think about writing as a career. She's like, you have some like serious talent. And that's what kind of got the ball rolling. Then I transferred schools, transferred to George Mason, and changed my major to English. But it was like that professor in that freshman year who really got me thinking about writing, because I had always enjoyed it, but I never thought again like me, a writer, like chalk it up to like poor self-image. I don't know what it is, but I just never thought I could do it.
And where was your freshman year at?
I went to Jacksonville University. It was my dad's school, and we were in Jacksonville and just went there for a visit. And I was just like, this is fine. You know what I mean? Like, wasn't really a thought out thing. But then once I was there and I hated it, that's when I really started thinking like, maybe I ought to find a school that's actually good for me and like I can do something with. And then transferred to George Mason in Northern Virginia. But it wasn't until I got that college girlfriend, that was when everything like clicked. It was like, oh, I need to do well in school so I can get a good job so I can provide for my family. And I finally saw more than 6 inches in front of my face, but it took that relationship to get there,
You mentioned 8th grade was maybe the point where like you started separating from some of your friends in middle school. And that's something that I always kind of talked about was I felt like Wissahickon was so mature as far as like partying and drinking and drugs and sex. And I was so removed from that world. 8th grade was like kind of like your start of dating, you said. What was like your party? I mean, you said you would go out to parties here and there, but like, as far as like, I don't know, the dating world being 13, 14 years old, what's that like for you?
Oh man, dating. Well, it's funny. I just brought this up the other day because somebody posted a picture I'd never seen before on Instagram. I was like, oh, that was my first girlfriend, and it was sixth grade, and this is kind of the first time I realized, oh, I have no idea what women are thinking. I went through the whole school year. We were in class, and didn't even know, wasn't really checking for her. Not that she was unattractive or anything. It was just she was on the other side of the classroom. Didn't know she was checking for me, but in the yearbook, I remember she wrote like, hey, what's up, Hank? Hit me up sometime, and threw me the number. I was like, yo, oh, she threw me the number. So I called her. She told me she liked me all year. I was like, word? I'm like, okay, should we go on a date? She was like, yeah, let's go on a date. So I took her to Twister. It just came out. So I took her to see Twister.
Yeah.
And went to see Twister. I was mad nervous and watched the whole movie and wasn't really watching it because I was watching her hand because I'm like, all right, I gotta hold her hand. I'm gonna hold her hand before the end of the movie. It's gonna happen. So we somewhere with Bill Paxton saying debris. I'm like, fuck it, I'm going for it. And I just held her hand and she held it back. I'm like, yo, I felt so adult. Wasn't bold enough to go in for any kind of kiss though. So yeah, finished the date. Then we dated all summer, but never saw each other again. We just talked on the phone every day for hours.
Yeah.
And then we're looking forward to see each other when school came around. Then 7th grade came. But again, I got sprayed down with the asshole and I pretend like I didn't know her. I ghosted her. I don't know why I did that. But it was 7th grade, man.
So you got sprayed with the asshole. I didn't know if you meant you or other people got sprayed with the asshole and were treating you like shit.
Oh, we were all assholes. Like, yeah.
7th grade was terrible for me too. I got like 3 suspensions in 7th grade. It was horrible.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but it's just like, okay, we're grown now. Grown means being an asshole. So it was weird. But made it through middle school with a lot of those friendships intact. But and going to different parties. I remember who was it? Just Nelson had a Halloween party in 7th grade, and it was just kind of stuff like that. You kind of get into this particular circle. And then you're just getting invited to shit. And that's what it was. But the tough part was my mom had like eyes and ears everywhere. So I go to a Halloween party, and like Becky Fox threw something and we're like walking around Ambler and they're sipping on gin and shit. And I get home that night and the next day, my mom was like, oh, I heard you was out drinking, walking around with people around Ambler. Like, couldn't do shit with my mom because everybody knew who she was, which means they knew who I was.
Right.
Yeah.
You have one sister?
I have two sisters.
Two sisters.
Two sisters. Yeah, there's Val, who was a senior when I was a freshman,
Mhm.
and then my sister Veronica, who's 10 years older.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah,
So, and all went to Wissahickon? I know
yeah,
Val did, right?
yeah. We all had Mr. Landis too. Like his first year was my oldest sister's, like when she was in middle school, I think. So yeah, he taught all three of us, and Mr.
Uh,
Zepka,
oh
and I think
yeah.
that was it. Yeah.
So then coming through following, I guess like a legacy, third generation Wisahickener. Um, what is that like? Like, do teachers know? Do teachers call out your sisters? Oh, you're the Jones. You're the Jones brother. Like, is that follow
Yeah,
you
yeah,
as you're
like
coming up?
for sure. Miss McCracken did that. Yeah, there were a couple of teachers like, okay, yeah, but I mean, again, my mom and my dad went to Wissahickon too. So
Oh
Mr.
wow.
Gallagher,
So you're
I
like
think he
fifth
met him.
generation.
Yeah, yeah. Who else? Mr. Oh, what was his name? Mr. Walker. Yeah, he
Yeah,
taught
yeah,
my
Walker.
dad. Yeah, and so there are a couple of teachers there who knew my parents. Which was crazy. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think of any teachers that stood out. Mr. Rezepka for sure did. Mr. Welsh too. Mr. Welsh was probably the teacher that hit me the most. He like
What did he
taught
teach?
accounting, uh,
Accounting.
yeah, counting and typing. But I had him senior year. It was just a throwaway class. I was just looking to graduation. Didn't give a shit about this class. Didn't I know I probably failed it because I learned fairly quickly. I'm like, this ain't for me. I don't know this shit. I don't know how. I'm not an accountant. I don't know how to take any accounting of this. So I tried for like half the semester, and I'm like, lost interest. I'm going to college. And but he was still like, we really had a great relationship. So near the end of the year, I remember he came to me and he was like, puts his hand on my shoulder. He's just like, look, we both know you're not going to be an accountant. He's like, but he's like, you have a way with people. He's like, you know how to make people feel comfortable. You're kind of a schmoozer. He's like, that's a valuable gift. He's like, I don't know what you're going to do, but keep that at the forefront that you're good at making people feel comfortable. So I did. I always kept that with me, and with a lot of what I do now, at least when I first got into the business, doing like assistant jobs, it's just about making people feel comfortable, and you're just somebody that they want around in a room, which is like a fishbowl for 20 weeks, you know?
Mm.
So yeah, I appreciate him saying that.
It's interesting that you came to that conclusion and then years later thought you were going to report on taxes.
That's the biggest gag. I'm like, how the hell am I reporting on? I'm going to like tax accounting conferences, like reporting on it. I don't have to understand it. I just got to make it sound good in the story. Like that was wild.
Do you do any sports or extracurricular activities?
What did I do? I mean, outside of school, I played basketball a little bit, played tennis. As far as high school,
Played tennis, really?
played tennis. Yeah, my dad always made me play tennis. Like from 12 to 16, I had to like summertime. I would go to like tennis camp, and then during the year, I would go to this country club, and I had to play every Saturday. And it was cool. I didn't mind playing tennis, and but tried out for the team freshman year, and the tennis coach was actually my summer coach. So I'm thinking, oh, I got this in the bag. Like he's been teaching me for the past few years. Didn't get on the team. I was like, fuck you, I don't want to play this shit anyway. Just went about my business. But yeah, it wasn't really into sports too much. I remember my cousin Dave, when he came to school with me junior year, he called me and said, "Cuz, if I come to school with you, will you play football with me?" And this is back when that was like ridiculous, like because there's no way he's going to come to school with me. So I'm like, "Yeah, sure, you come to school with me, and I'll play football with you." And he said, "I start on Monday, nigga," and I'm just like, "Yo, are
Oh,
you kidding me?" So, but it was cool. I'm like, all right, I'm a man of my word. So we like trained all that year, and I was working out every day, and we were running in the summer. I was trying to get in some kind of shape, get in the training camp, break my collarbone on the third day, and you never saw somebody so pleased. I was like, I mean, I don't got to play no more. I'm done for the season. Bet. That was it. Went to every game, supported the team, but I wasn't trying to play football. I just wasn't really. I like playing basketball a little bit, but sports just never really did it for me.
interesting. I never attempted. That's why everything I did was just like musicals,
Yeah,
musicals, chorus.
I
That was
remember
it.
that. I went to the one you and Brandon were in. Was it Guys and Dolls?
Mame,
Okay.
Mame. Yeah. Uh, Terrible experience. I quit. So TV Lab is when we did that senior year, and maybe you went to that one as well. And I think Brandon might have been in that one too. I quit that one.
Okay.
Senior year, that was My Fair Lady. But that was the only realm of like extracurricular I ever got into. I was not into playing sports.
See, I wish I would have thought to do that or had the confidence to do it. You know what I mean? Like, but that was never a thought either. It was always just kind of sports or nothing, you know?
You know, it's funny. Like a lot of no guys did it in middle school. I was the only guy in middle school that ever did musicals in our grade, at least. And then it was like by high school, maybe like you'd get, 15, 18 guys that would do it max. So it stepped up. But yeah, that you were in a large group of guys that just never would do it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Nobody in my circle would think about that. It wasn't even like I only went to that show because Brandon was in it. You know what I mean? That's when I was like, oh shit, Brad's in there too. You know what I mean? But yeah, it was just never a thought.
So who were you hanging out with in high school? Who were your friends?
Oh wow, I feel like there's a changeover every year.
Did it change what was it? What do you think that was attributed to?
Well, I mean, freshman year was just revelatory. I mean, because again, everybody was going their separate way. I was friends with a lot of girls in middle school who, when I got to high school, it's just like, hey, what's up? Like, we still cool? And they're just kind of like, no, you're not one of, you're a black dude, but you don't play sports or anything. You're not really with those black dudes. I can't really be seen with you. So it was weird. I'm like, damn, what do I do? So, and again, I was pushing away from some of my white boys that I was cool with, like all through middle school, because I remember the exact moment when I was like, I'm good, that's it. Like I was hanging out with them. We were walking through a neighborhood in Bluebell. We saw some movers moving some furniture out of a house, and they were black dudes. And one of the guys, I remember his name, I'm going to put him out there. He was like, look, y'all, they're robbing the house. And that would have been like kind of the last straw for me, because there were just little comments before that. And I was just like, and I've been making more kind of black friends in high school, because I'm taking different classes. You know what I mean, because your world just kind of opens up. So I'm meeting black people who didn't know me the past X amount of years. To your point, anybody that did know me had this idea of who I was. Like, he's hanging out with the white people. He ain't like black. So being a freshman in high school, you're meeting a bunch of new people. I'm hanging out with black people who didn't have this backstory on me. So I'm like, all right, I'm good with the little racist kind of comments from the white guys, and we're not even connecting anymore. So that's when I started hanging out with more black people. You asked who specifically, like freshman year, it was like Sean Benson, Anthony Troop, who else? Me and my boy Raphael Twiggs started hanging out a lot more. Me and Aubrey started hanging out a lot more. And then that carried over in the sophomore year when it was like me, Aub, and Coop were together every day. Like, we was just out. And when I say out, it usually meant the Burger King up by the mall. You know what I mean? We were just always together. And Aubrey was dating Nettie at the time, so we were always in West Ambler by Nettie's crib hanging out. And that was great. Like, it was the first time I really felt like, oh, I got real friends and we're just kicking it every day kind of thing. That was new. And we going to like Fort Washington Expo parties, which kind of had it was like these quarterly parties that were thrown by, I think it was like 103.9 or some shit. And that was like so eye-opening to me. That shit was like, I never really gone to any black parties like that. You know what I mean? Like, I'm coming off of going to parties in middle school where, with the white people, they do that dance. It's like this wiggle. It's kind of this side-to-side thing, like they're having some kind of sex. I don't know what it is. So that's my frame of reference. So I get to...
Wait, what was it? A kind of wiggle, you said?
It was like this worm kind of thing. I don't know what it was, but I figured that's how people dance. That's the shit I was doing at those middle school dances. And then I get to these parties and I'm like, oh, we don't dance like that at all. And I realized like very, very quickly with the help of some people that, oh, I dance like a white dude. I mean, I think Brittany Johnson told me that shit 10th grade. I hope you're listening to this, Brittany, because I remember it. She was just like, Hank, you dance like a white boy, man. You gotta practice. And I'm like, yo, I've been dancing like a nut this whole time. So called Aubrey, like, oh, you be dancing all the goddamn time down the hallways. I need you to come over, show me something so I don't look like a nut at these parties. Aubrey was like, cool, came over, showed me how to do the heel toe, showed me the crip walk. He had some other little things I couldn't really pull off. And to this day, I rely on those two dance moves. So thank you very much, Aubrey.
Wow. That's so interesting. I've talked a few times about like my experience in school and not having like a black experience
Hmm.
growing up. Being biracial, my whole family is white. I didn't have a relationship with my dad's side of the family, and I didn't have really any black friends.
Yeah.
All my friends were white. So I'm curious your experience prior to coming into high school, where you said a lot of your friends are white. We grew up in the same town, in the same borough.
Hmm.
Um, I always thought, just being biracial. No, I don't even think that's it. I just for some reason I think it was maybe the area I grew up in was kind of hard.
Yeah.
Um, as far as the neighborhood and what the kids were into from time to time, stuff that just much I think like what probably like what your parents were like, just didn't fly with my parents. Things that were going on in the neighborhood. So hanging out at certain people's houses or whatever wasn't really allowed. It was more of like you can play outside, but that would be about it. So and then once we moved from there, and we moved to like an apartment, I didn't really have like friends outside of the white friends that I already had accrued from living there.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, you growing up in Ambler, what was your experience then with I guess friendship with race
Hmm.
outside of school, but not really coming across that, but then also your experience just with blackness, I guess, if that's being that you were surprised at how you're supposed to dance, or the stereotype that you weren't even aware of that at that point.
I had no knowledge of. And yeah, to back it up, like I told you that we lived in Ambler for a bit, but then we moved, we kind of like moved on up to the white neighborhood over by
Okay.
like West Ambler. It was like you kind of drive up Mount Pleasant,
Hmm.
and we were right there, and that was just jarring, kind of, because again, coming from Ambler, I referenced like Justin Newman and Theo Thompson. I think like Chris Stout was like my hero back then. I mean, not Chris Stout. What was his name? His brother
Sorry,
was
Chris.
Jason. Yeah, Chris
His brother was
something.
what?
His brother's name was Jason. He had a younger brother named Jason. Shout out to Chris Stout too.
Thinking
But
of
anyway, yeah,
Jason
there was this,
Morris.
not Jason Morris. Shout out to Jason too. But yeah, there were just more black people. But moving into this white neighborhood, and we had white people in Ambler too, but this neighborhood in particular, it was just a little different for me and my sister because we were all over that neighborhood in Ambler, like playing with everybody. But and a lot of these kids in the neighborhood were cool. Like we had like Carrie McCormick was there with her brother Chauncey. They were
Hmm.
super cool. And I heard Paige's podcast too, and she said one of no kids in the neighborhood. I was in that neighborhood, Paige. All right, I was there. We had Chris Headland, Joelle, his sister. We had the Fricks, Ryan Early. We had a lot of kids in that neighborhood. We had Mary Kate, who was not quite in our neighborhood, was in the neighborhood next to ours, but was always in our neighborhood. We had a lot of kids, but that was the first time me and my sister kind of noticed that we were treated different. Not by everybody, by enough. We were like, we don't know how we feel about this, but it wasn't. We couldn't identify it, so we still kind of were hanging out with our circles. And for me, it was guys like just in my class, Tom Frischman, Mike Kalargis, and a bunch of people like that. That was like my circle. Um, but yeah, it's just that's in high school. It just started shifting.
That's so interesting. I mean, I definitely craved that, especially once I got to high school. Just music, TV shows, movies, craving that experience. Coop was like a big part of that for me.
Yeah.
Alea, Kelly Brailsford, were some of the ones that like I got out of got that experience from. But it wasn't all the time for you. It's interesting, like you saying, like that's kind of like the moment where you really settled in, like, oh, these are real friends.
Exactly. But it wasn't easy. I wasn't well received in West Ambler. The light skinned dude coming down from the rich neighborhood trying to talk to the girls, that's never well received. So I had some run-ins with people. But I'd still take that over trying to kind of fit in someplace where I never felt like I was accepted. I'm not gonna say I was all the way accepted hanging out with the black crowd I was with, but I was more accepted there than with the white kids, you know. And yeah, I got a better response from the black girls, so that's why I stayed in that lane.
Yeah, that always will sell you.
Yeah.
Where are the girls at? Wow, that's
Well,
really interesting.
I was always conscious of it though. It was something that was never, I was always aware of the fact that I was straddling this line where it's like, too black for the white kids, not black enough for the black kids, so I never really felt like I fit in anywhere until college.
Yeah, that was my exact experience. For me, I don't think it ever. I mean, at a certain point, I think you get old enough um, that you don't. I mean, like now that you're a grown up, you make your own friends and go where you want to, so to speak, and can make friends from anywhere. But when I was younger, definitely was kind of the mentality of can't go here all the time.
Right.
But I don't think for me, I ever really ever got to dive into a full on black community um, in any anywhere that I
Mm-hmm.
ever ever existed, lived, worked, or anything like that.
Yeah, it was. I don't know. It was just a comfort to it. Like, since I wasn't being well received in parts of Ambler, that's when I started venturing out. I was going to hang out in Norristown a little bit with my cousins, and I was going to like this youth group at this church in West Philly and talking to people there. I was going to where black people had no frame of reference of me. They weren't looking like, oh, that was the dude that rode the white kids bus in middle school kind of thing,
Mm,
or at least, and that might be me projecting. That might have been my insecurity too, but I do remember hearing the comments like, "What is he doing here? Why is that do?" You know what I mean? So it wasn't made up. So it was nice to get out and meet other people who didn't have this idea of who I was.
yeah. Did you look for something like that leaving Wissahickon of like when you were looking for schools? I mean, Jacksonville, um, is that a heavy black Jacksonville University?
Yeah, it ain't like my light skinned ass down there.
Yeah.
I'm on there quick.
Were you looking like to keep that experience going as you were searching for schools? Was there any prerequisite for you when you were looking for schools?
I was just looking to get as far away from Ambler as I could. I was just over it. Um, I was just all right. Whoever takes me is far enough away. I'm bouncing.
What was far
But
enough
then
away?
Jacksonville. Jacksonville was far enough away. But then I realized it was a little too far. I don't want to be that far. Like DC, let's look at DC schools. I just want to be a couple hours away. That'll work. So I can still pop home like once a month. Because then I got away and I miss my friends. I miss everybody. So DC was it. And George Mason was. I'm so glad I picked it. It was a great school.
Did your friends leave as well? Or did your friends stay in Ambler? You say you missed your friends, so was coming back, everyone was there, or was
Yeah,
it just holiday time?
everybody stayed pretty much. Some other friends, of course, went to school, but yeah, come back at holidays and they were all there. But for the most part, most of my friends stayed. Like I think about my graduating class, there wasn't a lot of black males who went to and finished college. I mean, it's like me, I think all Twigs, that might be it. I don't think we had a lot of black dudes in my class anyway, but yeah, of the ones that were there, one a lot of us that went to college. So like a lot of people in my circle just stayed local.
Was that ever a thought for you to not go to college? Was that ever going to be available to be
That
an
was,
option?
my mother, like, there was no option. I was going to college. It was
Yeah.
not a choice. Yeah. And
Did
I
you
wanted to go.
did you look anywhere else? Being that you switched before, was there anything else on the list before you chose
Yeah, not
Jacksonville?
really. I mean, North Carolina A&T, which was a HBCU, didn't end up picking that. There wasn't a lot, and I wish, I remember my dad came to me when it was time to pick out colleges. He kind of dropped the big book of colleges on my lap and was like, "Have at it." And I think he was just used to my sisters. Like my oldest sister is just tenacious. Like she picked out all of her own schools and scheduled like just tours and everything. My sister Val, she picked her college, so I don't think they were used to kind of giving a push. I think I needed a push, and so I was just kind of left to me to find some colleges. So I was literally going through the book just like this, picking something. Um, yeah, it wasn't really thought. It was really just getting away from my hometown. I was just kind of over it.
Um, you mentioned out of sight um, from middle school. Was there anything in high school, movie wise, that you were deep into?
Anything in high school was it Battle Royale? That was
Really?
Yeah, Kalar just put me onto that one. That was I remember he let me hold that DVD and I watched it and it just blew my mind. It's like, oh,
Wow. You know, I went to film school also at Temple, but like I don't think I became aware of that till then, like
mhm.
04 or something like that. Wow, you're on that
Yeah,
early.
yeah, that was a big one. What else in high school was really just whatever I went to go see. I remember going with Alvin and Nettie to go see Baby Boy. That one was like, oh shit, like that movie still doesn't get enough love. I thought Baby Boy was amazing. I think
It
Jess Davis
is.
did it too. That might have been the last time I saw Jess Davis in life. I think it was when we went to go see Baby Boy. Yeah, that was crazy.
Because you guys are in the same state.
I know she been every time she's like, yo, come up to Oakland. I'm like, it's not that easy. I mean, it's like I'm in Charlotte. You tell me,
For
oh, come up
both
to
of you.
Philly.
For
Like,
both
yeah,
of you. For both of you. She works long days and has tons of kids, and you just had a kid. You're working long, like.
yeah. We ain't do it 10 years ago. We damn sure ain't doing it now. But
Oh, that's funny.
yeah, that's still we check in with each other from time to time. Though, like happy for her, but yeah, I just haven't been able to get up there for long enough to see her. But what other movies were there that really hit? I remember senior year, like we were at the movies every week. Like we went to go see like Lord of the Rings, Spider Man, Blade Two, all that shit came out senior year. And, we went to see like The Born Identity, all of those. It was dope.
You mentioned Baby Boy, and just you're in the industry. Did you have any type of like connection, like emotional wise, to John Singleton and his films?
To his films, for sure. Higher Learning was the one I watched more times than I care to admit. I loved Higher.
Same.
First time I saw Higher Learning was at Brandon's. Brandon and I had this car washing business after my freshman year of high school, like in the summertime. So we wash cars all morning, and then we just go back to his house and like just watch movies and shit. So I remember he put me on to American History X and Higher Learning, and I thought they were both just like mind blowing. You know, um, I think that was one that had a big impact on me, especially of John Singleton movies, like even more so than Boys in the Hood. But then I met John out here. We were at a party, and I was there with my wife, and I was trying to talk to him a little bit, and completely ignored me, and then proceeded to hit on my wife in front of me. So it's funny. It's funny how fast everything goes out the window. Like how much you kind of idolize this person and just want to pick his brain. At that moment, I was ready to knock his little like 5'4" ass out. You know,
Wow. Oh, is he
but it's
tiny?
still, yeah, he's not a tall guy, but it's still John Singleton though.
Yeah. Oh,
But I
that's
still,
disappointing.
I mean, what are you going to do? How many people try to approach him? So he probably has like immune to that at that point. But he's still prolific and amazing, and I wouldn't be out here if it weren't for him. So I'll let that go. But yeah, at that moment, it was like I don't care who you are right now.
Hmm.
But
I loved yeah, obviously I loved John Singleton. That's why I asked when you mentioned Baby Boy, just being one of like the first besides the Hughes brothers, in our generation as far as black directors to bring I guess modern day or contemporary film to our of black life to our eyes, and Singleton was probably in numbers the greatest contributor to that from our
100%.
generation.
That I mean, to be early 20s making Boys in the Hood, man, like Jesus. And just everything
It's
else, and he lived like I live in South LA, and we would run into him down here. Like we saw him maybe a month or two before he died at a restaurant that we go to, and like he's always in South LA, man. Like he loved it down here, and that's why it's cool to watch Snowfall and like just kind of to see his influence on there and see how they depict South LA. Yeah, man, he was just, and I have a lot of friends who they wouldn't be where they are if not for him, man. So he's just, yeah, he's amazing.
yeah,
But he
Snowfall's
liked he liked the ladies though.
Snowfall's definitely my tied for favorite current running show on
Man,
TV.
like the Image Award nominations just came out, and like I'm on that committee to vote. And of course, I vote for Snowfall, but it wasn't on the list. Like it was like an All American and a few other shows that I don't give a shit
Oh,
about. But it's like Snowfall needs to be front and center on there,
yeah,
man.
I
It's
love
so
that
dope.
show.
Yeah, really well done.
Okay, so let's talk about LA a little bit because you mentioned once you got out there and You said you stayed with Brandon for like a little bit in 2010. I guess the winter of 2010. So
Yeah, got there in the fall. So fall 2010.
before your final year, was that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I
And
stayed
then
with him January 2010 just for vacation, and then I moved out there and lived with him that September.
so literally right before all that, like in between that, I went out to California.
Oh
In
wait, I think you told me about that.
Yes.
You were down in like
Yeah.
San Diego, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I was there and I got there in like May and I left in August because I was
Holy shit.
like not into this at all. And
Wow.
the exact like Brandon's like I was in San Diego and we were working on some stuff and I was just like this is not like happening. I'd had like a couple meetings with people that knew people that were like, "Oh, what was it the game that you worked on, right?
Yeah.
On BET?"
Hmm.
And I told you like I had heard about that show too and someone's like that's a great place to get started and we might be able to connect you to somewhere and I was just so not in I was just so lost in what this world of LA was and I don't know turned off a bit I guess and probably being naive
Mm.
and I just was like you know what I think I just want to go back to the East Coast. I just like the East Coast. Even if I end up moving to New York or something like that, I'd rather do that. But I was like, this is not. And I remember telling Brandon, I was like, I'm going back. And he's like, stay with me. Like, just like stay with me for a little bit and figure it out. And I was like, nah, I'm out on this. And I left in August.
That's crazy, man. I can't next month. But it's funny how that goes though, because it's that sharp. Like either you come to LA and you love it or you hate it. I've yet to find somebody who's straddling the fence. You know, because I know other people who came and just like the same for me and bounced. You know, um, but I loved it. I knew the second I got here, it was just like, oh, this is the best decision. You know,
What did you love?
just the vibe of it. I loved how different it was. I loved that the beach was so close and that I could look one direction and see mountains and see beach elsewhere. I love that everybody that here was on the same page. You know, like everybody. It's a transplant city, so everybody's out there to make it. You know, whether you're an actor, DP, director, writer, like it was cool to be around a bunch of people on the same track. You know.
When I listened to the interview you did last year, where you talked a little bit about what you did when you went out to LA, and I think you said you worked for uh, not TurboTax,
Oh, LegalZoom.
LegalZoom. You were doing copywriting,
I was
something like
like a
that, right?
proofreader, like a
Proofreading.
proofreader of like legal docs and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So like when you talked about it, that was like your first job in LA, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
So when I hear that and I think like, yes, that was in my head what I thought I was going to do, I was going to need to do to like even start. And I couldn't push myself to do that. I don't know if it's
Mhm.
ego. I don't know if it's just, I just didn't think my vibe couldn't accept finding my way in these tiny steps. And mind you, I was coming off of like working at WWE. So I probably thought that I should be starting somewhere about here. And in
Right.
reality, no one knew what the fuck pro wrestling, how you write pro wrestling, or what that was. So like I
Which
was,
I have so many questions about, but we'll get to that
yeah,
side.
yeah. So like I was like starting here or here, you know what I mean? Like no one cared, no one knew what it was. People, I would talk to people and they go, "So you wrote like punch punch kick or like what do you mean you wrote?" Yeah, it was like a miserable attempt. And to me, I was just like, "Oh, this is not what I thought. Not into this at all." What was your trend? What was like your grind from like moving out there? You stay with Brandon, LegalZoom. What are you thinking during between that period and then was the game your first gig?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the first 2 years in LA, got the job at LegalZoom. That first year, like LegalZoom was my life because like money was scarce. So I was just working so much overtime at LegalZoom. When I wasn't doing that, I was just reading a bunch of books about writing scripts and writing a lot of bad scripts. And I took like a UCLA extension course on script writing, and yeah, I was just doing that kind of work. And then the second year, I'd started meeting people like through Brandon a little bit who were creators who were out in LA to try to make it. And one of them like did a short film which Brandon was a producer on, and I worked on it. It's just like a PA, and they used like my uncle's house out there to shoot at. And I remember I was parking cars, and I hit a trash can, and this black woman saw me, and she just goes like, "Oh my God!" I'm like, "Yo, don't tell nobody." And she turned out to be like the star of the short film. And so we both laughed about it, and we were cool and fast friends, and then stayed friends after that. And she had just gotten a job as an assistant to Mara and Salim Akil, who had the overall deal with BET, and they're creators of the game and Being Mary Jane. So she hit me up like a month later saying, "Hey, we got this job, as a writer's production assistant for the game. Do you know anybody?" I'm like, "Yes, me." No idea what a writer's PA was, but like, why not? You know what I mean? So, and I had done an internship before that, and LegalZoom was cool about it. They let me leave at lunch for a couple hours, 2 days a week, to go do this internship at a literary management company, which was terrible, and I didn't really learn too much. But I was able to put that on my resume, use that to get an interview for this writer's production assistant job. And writer's production assistant, of course, is, you're getting lunches, you're getting coffees for the writers in the writer's room, you're doing all the miscellaneous errands that nobody else wants to do. So that was the job. So I went in and interviewed and was super adamant, like, this is my shot, got to give me this shot. And they were like, "All right, you got spunk, let's see where this goes." And I remember driving back to LegalZoom on a Thursday. I was like, "Hey, tomorrow's my last day, don't throw me a party, I'm out." And that was it, because I was over that job at that point anyway. And then I started at the game that Monday.
Prior to, for that year and change, before you make that connection and start going through that process, are you thinking like, you're going 2 months, 3 months, 8 months, and you're just working at LegalZoom and you're writing, but like, what are you thinking? Like, how do you keep pushing forward? Because that's what I feared I wasn't going to be able to do. I feared I would lose hope, lose direction, end up just working forever at LegalZoom.
Right.
What's your push, or what's your vision for did you have a vision? Did you know what your goal was?
For sure. I mean, I had 3 or 4 days driving across country by myself to think about it. You know what I mean? Like, the fact that I made that move is like super.
That's how I did it too.
Yeah, it's like, it's dramatic. I mean, it's this thing. I remember packing my car, and it was like this cathartic process. Like, I'm not getting a U-Haul. If it doesn't fit my car, I'm throwing it out. So I was able to let go of all this shit from Virginia. I could let go of the X and shit. So doing all of that, I'm like, this is it, man. It's like, I make it, I'm gonna die trying, kind of thing. And that always kept me going. I had this relentless drive. And I remember being at LegalZoom, and I was making friends, but I never really talked about why I was there, what I was doing. I didn't want anybody to take me out of my zone. I remember one assholey coworker, somebody's like, "Oh, Hank just moved from the East Coast." Like, "Oh, what? You came to be an actor? You came to be in Hollywood?" And I was just like, "Nope, no, came for the weather." I was not going to let him shit on me. I mean, I didn't want to give him that opportunity, because I knew why I was there. And the few people I did tell, they'd be like, "Oh, you should talk to such and such." I'm like, "Nope, no, I'm good. Like, I know what I'm doing." So it was just this obsession. I was obsessed with making it, and just getting to where I needed to be and doing it as fast as I could. So I was just learning every step of the way. I was, again, taking classes. I was going to like film festivals. I was trying to meet writers, applying to different fellowships, just whatever I could do. And Brandon was super helpful, like connected me. Yeah, man, it was just a relentless, obsessive drive.
That's awesome. Yeah, I couldn't see myself pushing through, making it. And that's why I asked, like, what was your push? And did you know you were gearing up to be a writer? Did you know that that's what you wanted to end up slotted in that spot?
I knew that was it. I knew I was coming out for writing, which was great, because I had a focus. I mean, a lot of people come out here and it's like, "Oh, maybe I'll be an actor or a director." Right? Like, you got to have a focus,
Right.
And that was it for me. It was writing, and really, again, this is all I've ever been passionate about all my life. I told you I wasn't into sports. I wasn't into school, really, like all this shit, but movies and entertainment and Hollywood, that's all I ever gave a shit about. So that was also a drive for me, because it's like, if I don't do this, at that time, I'm like, I don't know what the hell else I'm going to do, like, with my life. This is all I care about.
Someone told me when I was out there once that he said, "Well, what do you write?" And I told him everything: comedy, drama. I can do anything. And he's like, "No, you have to pick one thing that you're good at. Did you find yourself starting to try to hone something? You said you were writing this whole time, or even just during your job. Did you find yourself having to pick a specific focus of the focus?
Well, I mean, I grew up in comedy rooms. Like all the shows I was on as an assistant were all comedies. So I would write comedies, but I also like writing dramas too. You know, that's just, I'm also, I wanted to flex. I feel like I had a voice for writing dramas. And I'm talking about like just TV pilots. And then I got some bad advice from somebody I probably should have listened to years ago, who told me the same thing. They're like, you gotta pick a lane, man. You're gonna confuse people. They're not gonna be able to know where to put you. And I remember at the time, I'm just like, I'm not doing that shit. Like, I'm not doing this to make people feel comfortable about how they see me. Like, I like writing both, and they can figure it out. And then you see this merging happen of comedy and dramas. You know what I mean? So we have all these hybrid shows now. So like, I feel like I was ahead of the curve on that, because now a lot of my samples I'm able to get on these kind of dramedies, and well, I switch back and forth now between comedy and drama, you know, because I've been writing both for a long time.
Hard shift music, high school. What were you listening to?
Oh, man, well, me and my cousin Dave were both huge Cameron fans. From '98 on, like Confessions of Fire, even before that with
SDE.
Yeah. I mean SDE, though that came out junior year. I remember that, but yeah, Cameron was it, which is cool now to go back and listen to, because my wife is from Harlem. So I'll be listening to a song and she's like, oh, I know that store. I'm like, oh, he's talking about Rikers Island. He's talking about C Block. I'm like, that's what he's talking about? I had no idea for the past 20 years, because there's so many local references. But she was like, oh, I know that person he's talking about. So I have like this insider track for it's like this dissection of Cameron songs for my wife.
Cam is a name dropping motherfucker. He's always dropping corners and like shit that I go, I think if the police were listening.
Right, they're just taking notes. Like, all right, guys.
Luke got Taliban. I'm like, jeez.
But yeah, so Cam was big. Of course, Jay-Z. Who else was I into back then? Cam, Jay, Beans, of course. Old Freeway, and anything Philly related. Remember Major Figures?
Yes.
Major Figures, yeah. And who else? Philly's Most Wanted. all those local Philly groups, man. That was, yeah, they were in steady rotation.
Yeah, that was definitely my wheelhouse. I'm curious, growing up, did you have a shift where you were, before like getting into current music? Do you have a shift like under your parents listening to other music?
Well, yeah. I mean, my parents are very different. My mom is, she loved Marvin Gaye, she loved Luther, Alexander O'Neill, Wham, Make It Big. Yeah, so that was kind of always on rotation. But my dad was big into oh damn, what's the boy's name? He had the song "He Wants to Be a Dental Floss Tycoon." Oh my God, I gotta look it up, man. I'm sorry, it's gonna drive me.
Yeah.
Gotta look this up.
I want to know this Dental Floss Tycoon.
Yeah. What is his name? Frank Zappa. That's his name.
Oh yeah, okay.
So yeah, my dad liked Frank Zappa, Talking Heads. He listened to the Beatles. I think my parents both listened to the Beatles a bit. So he had like these contrasting sounds in the house. And then my sister, like goddamn, Val was big into like Nine Inch Nails, like heavy shit. Like that was all like she loved Nirvana. Yeah, so she had that bumping her the whole time. So like Nirvana was dope. Nine Inch Nails was dope. Like I was like, oh shit, like they're on some. So I would listen. I was still like kind of worshiping my sister back then. So I would listen to what she listened to. And then Veronica, just like all things SWV, TLC, all those 90s favorites. I mean, she graduated high school in 92. So yeah, a lot of Tribe Called Quest. So I had so many different types of music in the house. And it's probably why I listen to such a different mix of sounds today.
Yeah, it's the exact same with me. I can see now why when you have these differences of being too white or too black, a lot of it for me also stemmed from the music, because I would have these, stuff that my mom listened to, or just whatever was on the pop stuff that would be on Q102 or Eagle 106 or whatever it was at that time, or my mom might be listening to Star 104.5 or something like that. and but then at the same time, like my dad being Stevie Wonder and Michael and Ray Charles and Marvin Gaye and yeah, stuff like that, and that's what you kind of listen to the rest of the time. But then on my own accord, it took years before like I really got deep into like rap. Middle school probably, so I
Hmm.
really started diving primarily into rap, and then a little bit of like more '70s soul again as I got older, as we all do, right?
But right.
Retros in.
But yeah, I was huge into rap like from the eighth grade up through college. And then, once Dat Piff came in, like I'm listening to Currency, was Khalifa, like all the mixtapes they were putting out, especially Currency when he was up, when Dame Dash had his little kind of art gallery slash studio in New York. And it'd be like Tabby Bonet and Currency up there. And they were putting out songs every day. So that was a big influence. But everything shifted once Spotify came out in 2011. That's like everything opened up musically for me, because I remember going to Coachella in 2012, and I was like, all right, before I go to Coachella, I got Spotify now, still new. I was like, I'm gonna listen to everybody who's performing at Coachella.
Wow.
So I went, and I was at work still, legal Zoom. So I just had my headphones on, and I had a Word document, and I was just checking off every artist and listening to their whole catalog. So that, I mean, I stopped listening to rap after that, like, because I would hear all these songs which were sampled by rappers, and I always assumed with the original songs. I'm like, damn, they just, like, the reason why I like this song is because of this artist. So like Saint Vincent, Friendly Fires, M83, Tame Impala, you know what I mean? Like my whole sound just shifted after 2011.
That's funny because the Coachella lineup just came out. I was looking at all these little bands and acts that were performing. I was like, I don't know any of these guys.
Yeah, those ones you need a magnifying glass for. Those are the ones I would start with those, and yeah, it just opened everything up. So I started doing a lot of festivals, and me and my boy Kalargis, I mentioned, we always had this relationship built on movies that we would talk about. But then once I started getting into this other music, he was like, boom, all right, you caught up. I've been to this too. And we started hitting all these festivals together.
Coachella, that's pretty synonymous, I feel like, with like the LA lifestyle.
Yeah.
Since you've been out there, what's maybe the most LA thing that you've been a part of, attended, done, seen? All slashes between all those phrases.
I mean, Coachella is probably number one. Um, Street food cinema, that's a big thing. It's like all these food trucks, and then they screen like just old movies. Like,
Oh, that's cool.
yeah, my wife, our first date was, I took her to Street food cinema to see Do the Right Thing, and it was great. We had the blankets and got some food, and that was it. I've seen like Lost Boys there. It's Halloween, like it's a good vibe, but that's a very LA thing.
Mm.
Going to see Beach House at the Hollywood Cemetery. They do like shows and stuff. That's a Hollywood thing to do. And then I went to my first Laker game this year. Hadn't gone
Oh,
because
for like a decade you've been out
for
there
a
and you've
decade
never
never,
gone?
never went one, because I was always broke like the first half of the decade. You can't Clippers tickets are cheaper than Lakers
Yeah,
tickets.
yeah.
And two, I couldn't stand Kobe. I was still mad about losing the finals back in 2001. I couldn't support this
Yes.
man. So I was like, I will not go to a Laker game until he retires. So, yeah, I see it. Double check. But yeah,
Never let the feud die. I don't care if he's dead.
hoodies.
Never let the feud die. I don't
But that's the
care.
thing, though. It did take him dying for me, because after he died, he won the Oscar, and he was just been
That was
doing
dope.
yeah, that was dope. He's been doing some interesting things post basketball, and I listened to his podcast with Matt Barnes, like the All the Smoke podcast, and it really hit me. And I remember I'm listening to it as I'm flying out to Sundance, and everything he was saying, I'm just like, yo, Kobe's like my hero. Like, I love post basketball Kobe. I was a fan. And then he died that
Yes.
Sunday. I listened to it on Friday. He died that Sunday, man. It was, that shit broke my heart. And I realized, like, yes, I didn't like Kobe through all my teenage years and all my 20s, but this is somebody he was in our lives since seeing him on Action News at his prime back in 96,
Mm-hmm.
and the kids being mad, talking about this is our prime, it's not Kobe's prime. Like, no, it's Kobe's prime. He brought Brandy, you know what I mean? But, and he blew out with a Hickman by like 40 points. Like, Kobe had been around since I was like 12 years old. So that shit hit hard when he died.
Yeah, so it's funny because I remember when I was at WWE visiting in LA, we were doing a show at the Staples, and Brandon came and visited me at the hotel, and we watched, I want to say it was Lakers Celtics playoffs
Oh,
championship
wow.
season. Um, It was
Well, that had to
Lakers.
it was 2010, right?
Wasn't 2010. It would have been like '08.
Oh wait, okay.
And I don't know if that was against the. It was definitely Lakers. I can't remember if that was against the Celtics or not. But
Yeah, I
um,
think because '09 was Orlando.
and '08 the Celtics won. In 2010
Exactly.
in 2010 the Lakers won. Right.
Right, right.
Right. So this was 2008, the first Lakers Celtics championship, and Brandon was like rooting for the Lakers, and I just remember really thinking like, wow, that's crazy. He's been out here for a minute. Like he loves these guys. Where do you now? You're a Lakers fan, but you mentioned Sixers. Your love there. Where do you stand as far as being a transplant in LA, but Philly's hard to let go of?
I noticed that with Brandon too. But Brandon wasn't, I mean, he was in Philly for a couple of years. Remember, he went out to California. He got his family from North Carolina. So I don't know how much
He
he
was in
really
he was in
kind of,
Massachusetts for a hot second.
yeah, I don't know how much he really claimed Philly like that. But for me, it's just Philly all day, man. Come on. Like,
All
I
right.
got the package so I can watch every Sixers game, watching Eagles. Like, there was an Eagles bar, which is partly how I got on the show Bel-Air, thanks to this Eagles bar. But we would go every Sunday and it would just be me and a bunch of Philly people and just watching Birds games every Sunday. It was amazing. But then they shut the bar down, so I had to bite the bullet and get the NFL ticket. But yeah, it's always going to be Philly. But I'm warming up to the Lakers a bit. I like going to Lakers games. I'm not going to call myself a fan, but when I'm not watching the Sixers games, I'm watching Lakers games.
Well, Philly, you mentioned it, Philly to LA. I mean, it fits the story. You're writing on Bel-Air now, which is, dropping very soon. I think this will probably like drop like the week before it airs.
Oh, okay.
So I think the show airs on like the 13th or something, right?
Yeah.
So this will be the Monday prior. But what's your journey like getting from? I know you worked on Mixed Dish. I kind of like would follow your stuff and be like, wow, he's fucking doing it. I don't see, I don't know what Brandon's doing necessarily. I don't see much of like his stuff out there, but luckily I've been able to just see all the things that you've been working on,
Mhm.
from like Mixed Dish and the Motown animated series
Oh yeah, yeah,
that
that
you
was
worked
that was the
on, and
first gig. Yep.
you've had your hand in like so many things that are out there. Um, how does that? What's your journey like? What's that career? I guess style of like you're working on one show, you get picked up for another show. What's the process? Is that like, hey, I know this guy Hank from another show, or are you applying for things like that? How does that work?
Well, it's yeah, it's a lot of it's word of mouth for a while until you get some solid agents and, and they help out. But I was working as an assistant on Blackish for the first two seasons, and had a great time. Learned a lot about writing. And when I wasn't working there, I would come in on the weekends to the offices and just write scripts all the time and making the writers read my scripts. But I got really tight with the showrunner, this guy named Jonathan Groff, and he wanted me to be his assistant, but I thought I was about to get staffed on the show, so I turned it down. But I think he always appreciated me turning it down because I like put him. I was like, no, let's not. Let's get somebody in here who's going to be with you for the long haul. I'm looking to leave. So when I didn't get it, he was just like, well, send me some scripts. I might have a thing for you. Yeah, just send me whatever you got. I'm just like, okay, I'm pro things, and I sent him two of my scripts and forgot about it. Like I left Blackish, which was not an easy decision. I remember I had a conversation with Kenya, the creator, and I told him like, look, bro, I love it here, but I'm not coming back to being an assistant, or at least this job. I ain't getting lunch no more. I was like, you got to move me up. And he was just like, didn't tell me what I wanted to hear. You know what I mean? So I was just like, I'm out. Can't do this shit. So I bounced without a job, and that's when I got on New Edition as a script coordinator because one of my boys from Blackish was working on that. He's like, yo, they need a script coordinator over here and send me your stuff. So I got on there and that was amazing. And got to work. It was just one writer on that. They treated it like a movie. So I was just working, just me and the writer in the trenches, rewriting every scene, because we'd be on set and it's just, and that's how features work too. You're rewriting constantly. So it'd just be me and him rewriting the script. And we're still tight to this day because of that. That was a great experience. But I had to leave that early because I got a call. And I remember I was on set and they were shooting their version of the "If It Isn't Love" video,
Hmm.
and I got an email saying, "Hey, Josh Wakely, I want you to come write on this animated show." And I had to leave New Edition early to go do that. And that was my first gig writing on the animated show. And Did that for a year and got to write 8 episodes, which was great. And I thought that was it. I called my mom like, "Oh, I made it. I'm getting paid to write. I'm living the dream. You don't got to worry about me no more." And then realized that nobody on the live action side gives a shit about children's animation. I thought I was just going to be able to jump. It's all writing. You know what I mean? Who cares?
Yes.
I can go do Breaking Bad after a kid's show. It all works. I mean, that's not the
That's what I
case.
thought about WWE. I was like, surely I'm going to be writing The Wire, like the
But right,
spinoff or something. David Simon, someone's going to want to see
yeah,
me.
there's a segue there. There's some, yeah. But there really wasn't. And I'd gotten a manager who was awful, who wasn't really getting me any kind of meetings or anything. So I ended up firing her. But it took a little while to get that next writing gig. Like after Motown Magic, I went to go assist my homie Yvette, who was running Dear White People. And she just hit me up like, "Hey, I try to get you on as a writer, but there's no money. So just come be my assistant, and I'll teach you how to run a TV show." And Yvette created Living Single. This woman, she got her start on a different world. This woman's a legend.
Wow.
So of course I take that job to be her assistant. And I'd wanted to meet Justin Simeon, the creator of it, because I heard he's just good people's, and I had a bunch of friends who were already working on it. So I went and did that for season 2 and had a ball. That was one of the best experiences. And left that, and then now I'm up to like 2018. I spent most of that year just doing different fellowships through like Film Independence because I figured I needed to diversify what I was doing. I was only working as an assistant. I was like, if I'm going to get work, if I'm even going to get representation that I want, I gotta kind of make myself sexier to people. Like I have to make myself shiny so that they want to rep me. So I applied to this program Project Involve through Film Independence, which is like a 9-month fellowship kind of program where it's like me and 29 other creatives, and we take these master classes where you're meeting like Barry Jenkins and like different Marvel execs, and they're kind of schooling you on the business, and then you make a short film. Now my track was writing, and so I wrote a script, and they pair you with a director, DPs, and all that, and then you go and you make a short film, and then you premiere it with the LA Film Fest that was happening back then, and then hopefully you can kind of hit the festival circuit with it. So I did that, and then I did another program through Film Independent called the Episodic Lab, which is just a thing to kind of fine tune your pilot, make it into a series pitch so you can pitch it and hopefully sell it. And that was most of that year before I finally got a call about staffing on a show called Family Reunion on Netflix, which is a family show with Tia Mowry and Loretta Devine. And some friends, some colleagues referred me for that. And then Yvette knew the showrunner, so she called the showrunner, was like, "Yo, Hank's my guy, you got to hire him." So that was my first live action gig, which was a multicam sitcom, which I had never been a part of before. So, you have the live audience and all that fun stuff. It's like a stage play.
And what was your, as a writer or?
Yeah, as a writer, I was a staff writer. That's the lowest level writer.
So when you're getting there, what's that world like? I mean, I have so many anxieties when I think about stuff that I have to like always overcome when I'm thinking about, could I do this? And right, I don't know what that world's like of a live studio audience. Are you kind of freaking the fuck out? Like,
yes.
Like I'm about to, like you only know animation at this point. You've been trying, and now here you go for live action,
Yeah.
and it's a style that doesn't even really happen anymore.
Yeah.
Are you just like, what am I going to do?
Every show I'm on, it's what am I going to do? Every show is like the first day of school. You're just
Thank
so
you
nervous.
for saying that. Thank you for saying that.
It is, man. It's just you're freaking out that first day because it's just like writing. What's writing? What are words? You just forget everything. But then once you get in there, you realize, okay, I know what I'm doing. And so a multicam comedy, like, yeah, you're writing scripts, but then once the script is done, you go down and do the rehearsal with the cast, and you're kind of taking notes as far as, because once you hear it out loud from the cast, you're like, okay, this joke works, this doesn't work, so we got to punch this, fix that, tweak that, and you're just tweaking constantly up until tape night. When you bring the audience in, now it's a live show, and you're going through it, and if the audience doesn't laugh, you got to come up with something there on the spot. Now some showrunners like to have what's called like a candy bag, where you just have jokes ready to go. Other showrunners are like, no, we'll just come up with shit off the fly. The latter can be very hard. But at the same time, it just comes. Like if you're just immersed into the story, and you got that kind of joke muscle turned all the way up, you're able to just kind of riff and come up with something in the moment. It's the best feeling. when your joke lands, especially if it's a joke that's early on in the development, because it's like it's got to get through all these filters. It's got to get through the writer's room, the showrunner, the network, then the audience and the cast. And when your joke makes it all the way to that audience and you get that big laugh, that is still the best feeling in the world, you know?
I love that about WWE was the instant so there wasn't much of a workshopping period for scripts at WWE. You know, we were working on 6, 7, 8 day turnaround. Not even really Wednesday to Tuesday was our turnaround time between episodes. But
how did you like it? Because I remember hearing about that. I saw that I think you even announced it. And I was like, yo, that's his dream job. This is what he always wanted to do. I thought that was it. But you were there for a bit and then bounced. Was it not a good experience? As you take a sip of the vodka.
I got fired, Hank.
Oh shit.
I didn't leave on my own free will. It was, it's a job that, like, you know, like we said earlier, you don't know that these things exist. So I didn't know growing up that this was a job. So like you mentioned, that's awesome. You remember like WrestleMania 8 and the magazines and all that, right? Because like when we're doing that, that's not a thing I think I could do. I got into this completely accidentally. Even when I knew the job existed, I didn't think that was something I could do. Complete accident that I ended up there and I got this job. But once I was there, it was like there was part of like a fact-finding part of the job. And I don't know if you have this with, you know, spending so many years watching movies and now you're there in Hollywood. But part of it is just like you're just experiencing it to experience it and almost like confirm this is the atmosphere that you always thought it was. That was a very hard thing for me to remove myself from, of like quietly a person who studied this industry. Now I'm in it. I'm meeting these people face to face. That was hard to shift on the fly. And when you talk about like you know, having to change scripts and all that stuff, like that's what we were doing all the time. It was constant, and I struggled with the spontaneity of writing down a good idea that's going to make the boss go, ooh. I had great ideas. I could write you months and months of shit. They're not going to do it. That was a frustrating thing, was, you know, you write lots of stuff on a show, you write stuff, and you might have rewrites, but you're probably rewriting more dialogue than entire plots. We're changing plots. We're changing characters that are on the show. We're changing interactions between characters. It was a constant anxiety dump to never know for sure if what you worked on for the last 5 days is going to ever even be set up, let alone recorded, aired live, any of that. You might, in the next 4 hours, have to come up with all new ideas.
Sounds like SNL.
It's like, so my dream before I knew that being a writer was a job was to be on SNL. Yeah. When I read about the process of SNL, of the week-long pitching to Lorne Michaels, and that is exactly what we did every single week. It was the exact same type of process, but we're writing. At my time, we were doing 5 hours. I was only responsible for 2, but we were producing, because we traveled for all of them. We were producing 5 hours of TV, 8 when we had pay-per-views a week. You know, so it's like if SNL like had a show on Saturday, Wednesday, and Thursday, 2 hours each.
Hearing your process though, it's so similar to what I do. It's not that different at all. I mean, it's revved up a bit. I mean, God bless you all for doing that. I mean, because that's a lot, but it's the same process. I think you could have jumped on a TV show and been like, okay, this is pretty similar, you know. Yeah, and especially like the show I'm on now is like a murder mystery kind of procedural show, and it's flexing muscles I didn't know I had, you know, and it's just very difficult from a storytelling perspective because there's just so many moving parts. It's like each episode we're tracking like the emotional journey of the character to what are the clues, what are the mystery beats to, okay, what's there's one more part to it I can't even remember, but it's every episode is just so many moving parts to it. So it's definitely something I'm learning on the fly as I still have to pitch. I mean, I got to show that I'm supposed to be there, but it's a lot different from Bel-Air, which is a lot different from Grownish, and especially Family Reunion.
Yeah, so I'm not familiar with Family Reunion, but I was going to say, like, a lot of the projects that I know you worked on, you've mentioned, are very black centric.
Mm-hmm.
What is that like? Remove, like, murder mystery now doesn't sound like a black movie, unless a black centric show, unless it's like Tales from the Crypt type of spinoff, but Tales from the Hood spinoff. But
Mm-hmm.
like, what's that first of all, was that by design, complete accident because of the connections? Is it just what you feel like was a wheelhouse? And what's it like for you to expand beyond that?
Well, I mean, yeah, Hollywood is still very much segregated. It's not an accident that I've been on all black shows because it's a lot of showrunners are still like, well, I don't have any black characters on my show, so I don't have a need for you, as if I can't offer anything outside of my blackness. But what they don't realize is their white show is universal for the rest of us. There are no white shows, because this is just what we had to grow up with as the norm. So I can write those voices. I know those voices. Especially coming from where we grew up. I feel like predominantly white school. Like, yes, I can, and that's my talent as a writer. I can write different voices, and I have other perspectives that I can draw from outside of my own. So that's been tough. So Truth Be Told, which is I'm on right now, that stars Octavia Spencer. That one, it's weird. I wouldn't call it a black show, but it probably is. I'm not sure. I haven't really been able to kind of get out of that lane. My wife did. My wife was on Only Murders in the Building, which is a big deal. They
Yeah.
only had like two black writers on that show, and she was on Smilf, which was a Showtime show, which again didn't have a lot of black writers. It's like her and one other person. So she's been able to kind of break out of that. But to do that, you just need that one showrunner to bring you on, see that you're talented, and then it's like telling the other white people, we got a good one here, But it's tough to get over that first hurdle.
Yeah, that's wild. That's so funny how similar that is to that was like, I can remember WWE being told, like, they're expecting me to pull out great things for our black wrestlers,
Yeah.
as if like because they're all white they couldn't do anything with Shelton Benjamin, or like, now I'm going to put magic into MVP, or with some of these wrestlers, and it's like, oh wow, like, I'm the savior for all the black wrestlers on the show. That was like that's kind of how it was positioned to me at times.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure. I mean, there's been moments in rooms where I've had white showrunners and they say or do something I'm really offended by. And it's like, well, I need this job, but if I don't say anything, am I letting down the ancestors? So you have to kind of figure out how to, I don't know, keep your sanity, keep your dignity, but not at the cost of your job. Um,
It's funny because that's a scenario similar to what you mentioned growing up, through middle school, where you have white friends and then feeling that need to say something. And then here you are as an adult in a workplace environment where you're kind of like, oh, God. And you have to kind of take a different
oh
road.
my God, yeah, I've been on shows with white coworkers, and I have flashbacks to high school. Like being in a honors class where it's just like me and my cousin Tara and the rest of the white people, and it's time to pair up in the groups. And your white group members, they kind of they leave you out, and it's like, we'll just do the work for you, kind of thing. And it's just like, wait, no, I can do the work. I'm here for a reason. So like when I paired up to write a script with somebody, and it's only after they read my script, they're like, oh, I didn't know you knew what you were doing. It's like, oh right, yeah, dumb nigga, right? But
Mm,
it's still have to, you're always kind of fighting that fight of people just having those preconceived notions of who you are. Like they see the beard and the chain and I'm tatted up. I'm like, look, man, I took ski trips to Tahoe every year and played tennis and shit. Like y'all don't know me.
the tennis.
Yeah, it's yeah. So always that's a I've come to terms with it, but because I know it's just something that's always going to be there, and it is cool always having that ability to surprise people and see that look on their face, like, oh shit, you know what you're doing. You know?
Yeah.
Right. Cheers, brother.
Cheers, buddy.
Um, it's fine. I feel bad. I feel like I'm kind of harping on this kind of high school kind of black white relations. And as I think about it, it was so much deeper than that. It wasn't just black white. Like I felt like just basically some bullshit. I remember situations with girls, like where I had a class with a Korean girl who we sat next to each other and we were like really digging each other and like feeling each other. And she was kind of deep in that Korean crowd, like that clique. And I used to give her rides home from school, and she would duck down in my car until we got off of the school because she didn't want any of her friends to see her in the car with me. You know what I mean? And one time they did, and they kind of bump rushed my car, and they're like, "Yo, Hank, oh, shoot me with that, Sean," and like she was so embarrassed, but she was just like, no, they can't know that we're kind of into each other, you know. In a similar situation, I remember with a white girl who basically said, I was like, look, we're digging each other. I know you're digging me. Like, I know I'm not in that clique, and I'm not like one of these kind of kids that you think I'm not that kind of black dude, but we got to do something here. She's like, well, look, you know, I can't risk kind of being like that coming out essentially. So we would have like these real conversations. I'm just like, God, this is some fuck shit. Like if I was this version of a black dude, if I was Earl Stout, you know what I mean, on the ball team or something, it would be cool. But because I'm me, like I'm not that, like you can't pursue that with me. So it was, I would think about all this shit in middle school, and it was kind of trippy. You know, it's just like, why are we like that? And I think about that because hearing the other podcasts, I hear certain people allude to race relations. The one that really stuck out to me was the British dude, who I didn't know him at all.
Amma.
He said something that really hit me, was how he was treated before he played soccer, how that was a turning point. And it was even after that, it was girls would be like, well, why are y'all with this dude? You know, and it was just, he never said it, but to me, I'm calling back to my situation. It was just like, damn, like it was that racism was always kind of there. You know, we were just so young, we didn't realize that's what it was.
Yeah, you know, and that's one of the things where like I kind of look at the school and especially with Asians, because I remember one of the things for me like doing this podcast is like I want to make sure that before I get 15 episodes deep, I have an Asian guest on the show. I didn't want it to be like, oh, I've just interviewed all these people and then like got to find an Asian. Like I wanted to try to incorporate Asian students into the show because I felt like during school, admittedly, was just like they were so segregated, and I think I was so ignorant that all I remember was the Asian kids in the hall, and they walked slow, and that was like that's how we talked about Asian kids, a lot of us. In school. And I feel like, you know, I'm such a different person from then, being 16, 17, 18 years old, that I can't even imagine, but talking like that. But, you know, my parents didn't know Asians. I didn't have like any type of education towards cultures outside of black and white.
Yeah.
Right? That was it for me. So anything outside of that was different. Indian, all that was different, that I was probably a little bit racist towards, at least ignorant. And I wish there was a little bit more education. And here I took Japanese, right, for 4 years, 3 years, whatever it was. I wish there was just a little bit more education and a chance to help us understand each other more. I don't know what that means. Maybe that's, you know, the critical race theory that people talk about now. I just wish it existed more, in high school, and even from a black perspective. I just didn't think, you know, I don't remember much about learning about black culture
at all.
You know, we have Black History Month. I remember little things like that. And
how many times am I going to have to memorize the I Have a Dream speech? I mean, Malcolm X, he had other speeches, guys. I mean, let's switch up the curriculum.
Yeah, we just didn't like learn a lot about stuff like that. And it now as an adult, when I go back, I wonder, right, just like you, do I remember it correctly, or am I just harping on these things that I'm sensitive to because of my upbringing?
Yeah, it was probably somewhere in the middle, if we're being honest. I definitely wish there would have been a little more of a focus on African American history. I don't know. I wasn't as in touch with my blackness back then as I am now, and a lot of that was I never felt like I was black enough, you know, because back then you equate your blackness to your economic standing, you know, like my cousins ironically used to call me Carlton. You know what I mean? Like it's always just this lesser black because of what my pop being a pilot and shit. And he had bread, but Again, it wasn't until college where, you meet more black people like you and you're like, okay, this version of black is cool. I'm not any lesser black.
I talked to Bianca about that a bit too. Her, once they had some money and they came into a really nice white neighborhood in Wooded Pond, and she was like the only female black teenager in the in the neighborhood, and then hanging out in West Philly West Ambler with her friends, and it's just being like a different atmosphere for her. But she came from a Jamaican family where she just coming here to the suburbs in general felt a bit out of place, and the people felt different than what she had spent the first bunch of years transferring schools dealing with.
Yeah, that was a good. I listened to that podcast. That was a good interview.
Yeah,
I never knew she was Jamaican. I never knew.
But it is funny that you've had those experiences and then spent all of your time on black shows,
right?
And now doing Fresh Prince,
yeah.
Which, like you said people called you Carlton. Your cousins called you Carlton. It's really like it's the exact story of guy from Philly, black guy, having to come into this higher upper class 1% family. I'm taking the original story, so if it's different on the
no, you're on the right track.
Yeah, if it's different, tell me. But this 1% family, and realizing that it's not 1-to-1.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's so crazy just getting to this point, getting to the show. It does feel like kismet. You know what I mean? It's just like it was supposed to happen. Because my samples that I wrote, my pilots that I wrote to kind of get me work as a writer, like the first one I wrote was, called The Realist, and it was a version of me in high school, and my cousin Dave comes to school, and chaos ensues. And it was taken from a real life situation where Gene Smack wanted to fight me off of some shit. I have no fucking idea why.
We should start a club.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know why this dude, because I said hi to his girl, shout out to Emily Dumont, and we were at a pep rally, and I wasn't about to start nothing with Gene. He had like 50 pounds of muscle on me. What the fuck am I gonna do? But my cousin, who's a little bit bigger, he stepped in, and I remember somehow we ended up in the parking lot, and this other dude, James Lynch, comes up. He's like, "Oh, you fighting my man, Gene? All right, I'm gonna fight you, Hank." Like, okay, I guess it's about to go down. And I hop in the car with my boy Sean Benson, and we ride over to West Ambler and to Frank Lucas's backyard. I'm like, what world am I in right now? What is this shit? I'm like, but fuck it, I'm along for the ride. And the boy James punked out. He didn't want to fight. When I'm just like, all right, I wish I would have just knocked him out right there, so I didn't have my cousin fighting by himself. But Dave and Gene ended up fighting, and that was kind of like Dave's rise at school, because he took care of business kind of thing. But all of this is the premise for the pilot that I wrote. It was all kind of lifted from real life, which was cool, because it feels like there's purpose to that now. So that pilot got me a lot of work, and so I was like, well, people like this. What if I did a dramatic version of this? About is basically Fresh Prince, but through Carlton's eyes. Instead of Will going to the family and the 1% family, what if Carlton would have go hang out in West Philly for a bit? So again, it was like a version of me. Guy comes to school. I named him Forrest Sellers. I always use names of people I grew up with, and they take a trip to North Philly, and chaos ensues. And both of those scripts are like my calling cards that get me all my work. But that script in particular is the one that Morgan Cooper, who created Bel-Air, he read, and he was just like, "Oh shit! Like you gotta be in my room. Like you get it already. You could be like the voice of Carlton, but you still got this Philly shit, and it's like best of both worlds." So that's it's a longer story than that, how I got on, but that was like the final thing that got me on.
I needed a Dave Atkins to help me fight Gene. I got in this.
Shout out to Gene. I named the character Gene. That's the perfect bully name. Is Gene Smack. It's perfect.
So it's funny because I didn't know Gene until sometime in middle school. We both had summer camp together, and we got in a fight in summer camp.
He was angry.
And then the next year it was like, oh shit, this dude's in my school now. Right?
Oh wow.
Yeah. Like I didn't know him before summer camp where we got in this fight. And it's like, oh no, I'm gonna have to see this guy every day. And so we got in tons of fights throughout middle school, and he was like this enemy of mine that I always felt I had. But I had this fight set up with R.J. Smythe, who had said some slick racial shit. So we had set it up that we're gonna fight, and Gene, being my enemy, comes to me and goes, "Yo, if you touch him, I'm gonna fuck you up." Similar type of shit, right? Where it's like, so I had to go and get Wham. I had to go get Will Clayton.
Oh wow.
Who was my guy from South Ambler. So I
Yeah,
go and
yeah, yeah.
I get him. I wave him out of his classroom, and he comes out, and I'm like, "Yo, I'm about to get in a fight at the end of this period in the bathroom downstairs by the cafeteria." And I'm like, "But Gene says he's gonna beat me up if I touch RJ." He's like, "After lunch, I got you. And he comes down, and it was like you said, you like, what world is this? Like, I'm in the bathroom and everyone knows we're fighting it. Like, in my mind, it looked like Dangerous Minds when there's like that fight in the locker room. And just there's girls pushed into the bathroom, everyone there to see it. And everyone's like, "Come on, fight." And I'm just waiting, and like I see Wham come in, and I'm like, "All right, great, here we go." And like then we go to business. But yeah, it's funny. Gene
Shout out to Will, man. Will's always a good dude.
I love Wham. I see him every once in a while. I'll see him maybe like once a year at an Ambler event.
Okay. Yeah, I think him and Miles is still cool. Miles is good people still.
Yeah. I haven't seen Miles in a few years, but of course I follow him. All the stuff he's doing on social media.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, man, Gene, I appreciate whatever prompted you to want to fight me that day, because that shit has been getting me work for the past few years, bro. But yeah, it's cool to write about all that. Also, like I always use names of people that I grew up with in whatever script I write, because it feels like it gave purpose to all those interactions, you know. And I always try to pick interesting names, whether it be Pumpkin, Wawa, Tuesday Lucas. You know what I mean?
We did have great names.
Yeah.
In our, you know,
solid names. So
Doobie,
Mau, like yeah,
White Mike.
Shout out to Mike Mason. But yeah, it's cool to call back to all that stuff, you know.
It's funny because I never had the guts to use the names, and so in everything I would write, I would just change the name slightly, and I'd have to remember who I was talking about.
Yeah.
Because I would slightly change the name, and never had the guts to use the actual name.
Yeah, but I mean, if you use the actual one, like it depends on the character. Sometimes I'll do a character that's completely foreign, and I'll give them a name of somebody I ain't like, just as a little joke for myself. But for the most part, when I use a name, I'm kind of building that character up. Like the character Forrest Sellers I mentioned, it's based on Forrest. You know, what I remember of him, I built the character based on just a little bit I knew about him. You know, and it just helps bring the writing to life. You know.
Hard shift. Let's talk about your friendship with C Money.
That's my guy, man, Chris Collins.
What was the attraction there? I just as mortal enemies go, he's the only guy I keep the flag flying high.
Yo,
I want to see that guy in the streets. No, I'm curious. So Chris was my last week before graduation, got in a fight, of course, and
you got in a fight with Money?
Wait, you don't know about this?
I had no knowledge of it.
Oh yeah, I got a fight my last week of school.
Oh, this is the one where, like, you almost didn't graduate.
Yes.
It was with C Money.
Yeah.
Wow.
He also said some slick racial shit in the cafeteria, and it was one of those things where all the black people here, and if it was just me, I'd let it go, but everyone was like, "Ooh, you hear what he said?" I'm like, "No, what did he say?" Yeah, so you know, like Jermaine's there, and like
I'm about to call him on FaceTime right now.
Yeah, everyone's at the table. They're like, "Yo," and I'm like, "Can't let that go." Ooh, good. So then I walked up to him and I slap him in the face. Just open hand slap right in the face in front of everyone in the cafeteria.
That was the only option available to you.
That was it. Just open hand slap in the face. And then like it was one of those things where he didn't really want to fight. So he tried to like just crawl the scene. So he just grabbed a chair and he like picks it up and throws it. And then everyone
I was there. I remember the chair. Holy shit.
And then everyone's just like, "Yo, hit him. Fuck that. Hit him. Fuck that white boy. Hit him." So I'm like, all right. So I just start hitting him and punching him. And like, next thing I know, I'm just punching him. He's not really punching back, but I'm punching him.
Yo, I feel like that's been stored away in the back of my head for 20 years. But I remember the chair. That's wild.
Yeah. so I got and that's where Mr. Dixon gripped me up for a hot second, and
The chokehold. He
yeah,
went full military on it. Yeah.
pulled me off of him, and yeah, that was how I said goodbye to. Which the bitch of it was that like we were working on shit, like we were trying to do a remake of California Love, it was a Hicken Love, and we were like trying to rap, but he couldn't rap on beat, so like it wasn't working very well. So you know,
listen to this shit too. That's funny.
I hope so. I hope so. I heard the songs, Chris, all of them. I heard them.
I went to his show. He did a show in LA. I went. I still got pictures of that shit. Like he had the fans doing their kind of low rent version of the 8 Mile climax. But yeah, money's just been around since high school, man. Like we had Spanish class together in 2000. I remember him standing up, yelling Eminem lyrics, and like he would always just be around. Like sometimes he'd just show up. I remember me, Dave, and Big Tone, Leo, we'd just be at the movies, and money would be there. We just stayed cool after school. Like he came to my baby shower in Brooklyn this past year, man. And like we check in, and yeah, he's good about reaching out and shit. Like I'll talk to you if you reach out. Like, and especially for me now, being in LA for so long, like the East Coast friends are dwindling. I mean, especially the high school homies, it's like virtually non-existent. So yeah, man, I appreciate him checking in and reaching out and all that shit.
Yeah.
Most people just don't. Everybody's into their own thing. Nobody's really overly concerned with what I'm doing, and they don't wish me any harm. I mean, some people do, but for the most part, everybody's just into their own world. But yeah, money's been cool about keeping in contact.
Well, I hope he's doing well. Like I said, I keep the rap beef strong. So anytime he wants some, I can still spit some rhymes. We can do it anytime.
Yeah, I think he's still. I don't know. He might have hung up the mic. He was boxing there for a little bit.
Yeah, I saw that. That made me worried.
But yeah, he probably still spin a little bit. He actually linked up with my wife's nephew at our baby shower, and the nephew is an aspiring rapper. And my wife was like, "Yo, you know your friend has been over there talking with Miles the whole night, right?" I'm like, "Yo, they about to put a mixtape out like tomorrow. The artwork's already done. Like this is the meeting of Smith and Wesson. This is how it starts."
I told you I was going to take it.
But that's funny.
Yeah, did you obviously making it to like such a visible level? Do you talk about like people who wish bad upon you? Do you think about like that type of stuff still in a present day form of like they're gonna see this? I can't wait I hope people see this.
Oh, people is strong. Like for the most part, man, it's nothing but a love fest from people back home. Even people I didn't like growing up, whom I knew didn't like me. I'd rather them just be like, I still hate you, monkey ass. At least I still have the same respect for you. You know what I mean? But it's weird the people that kind of come around who I'm like, we ain't like each other then. Don't try to fake the funk now. But yeah, there were some people who it was just like this arc of hate. You know, it was like when I first moved, it was like, well, he ain't gonna make it out there. Then that transition to, well, yeah, I mean, he's partying with celebs and shit. That nigga's still broke though. And now it's, well, of course he made it. He's born with a silver spoon in his mouth. So it's just the arc of hate over time, which came from folks that I love, who were like, I thought were close. So it was a learning experience for me as far as friends. Some people only really like you in a particular box. If you step outside of that, and you make them kind of look, you turn that mirror towards them a little bit. Maybe they're thinking about what they're doing or not doing, but it's really them problem. It's not anything I'm doing, but I still don't have time for that. I mean, not gonna bring me down because you're dealing with your own shit. But that's a low percentage for the most part, man. It's just a lot of support. But as far as like stunting, because I got my name out there and I'm able to post announcements, hell yeah, like, fuck y'all. I mean, I remember all that shit that happened. Yes, I'm petty.
Tell him, Petty Wop.
It was petty season. You goddamn right. I think about it. But yeah.
So where did you meet your wife?
We met through this former friend. We're not even friends anymore. An ex-coworker of mine. I was meeting up with her for drinks. And she said, hey, come over to this restaurant. I'm with some people. We'll just go get drinks after. So I go to meet her. And my wife, Tembi, was there with 2 other people. And we just sat, chopped it up for a bit. and got everybody's number, but I really wanted Tembi's. And so I leave with this coworker. I'm like, yo, what's up with your homie Tembi? Is she with anybody? And she's like, I don't know. So, but y'all probably make a cute couple. I'm like, yeah, me too. So we did like the Facebook social media thing over the next 2 months, just happy birthday to you and just smiley faces at random places. And then we actually met up at a happy hour thrown by the same former friend. And it was like 3 hours in and three old fashions it took for me to ask her out. And she said no. And I was just persistent. I kept asking, and I was looking up dates in real time. And I said, look, we can go see Do the Right Thing at Street Food Cinema, and it'll be fun. She was just like, all right, fine. God, yes, we'll go. And then we went on that first date, and that was kind of it. And then I took her to my old boss Kenya's 4th of July party, and then we went back and we're watching Jinx on HBO, like a documentary. I remember she said, she was like,
R.I.P.
I know, right? That motherfucker. But she leaned over and she was like, I was waiting for this all day, because we had hit 2 parties actually. We had bounced around and then we went and got wings, and I bought her some gummy bears, and we went and we're watching the Jinx, and she was just like, this is what I was looking forward to all day. And I looked at it and I'm like, oh, this is it. It was like the second or third date. I was like, this is probably it. And here we are, a baby in the house later.
Is that as the guy was talking about how he killed them all? Killed them all, of course.
Oh, he's like, I shouldn't have burped. Oh man, that dude.
So she was. Was your circle like film media based at that point?
Yeah, well, I mean, shit. My circle, when I first got to LA, I was hanging out with Brandon and some other folks, and having a good time. But I quickly realized that I needed to kind of find like my people. Like I was hanging around good people, but like I get drunk and make bad decisions. You know what I mean? Got to find people a little more jaded. So it's like you really do have to
God
find your
bless you.
people. You got to find your people in LA, man. You really do need that village. So it took a little while for me to kind of narrow, find my people. And my boy Curtis actually moved out here in 2014 from Philly, and he was actually a play cousin to Twigs. So boy Raphael Twigs. Yeah. That's how I met him. Like Twigs had his 15th birthday party, and we went to World on Wheels in the city, and that's where I met Curtis. So I've been knowing Curtis for a long time. Weren't super tight, but then he hit me up and he's like, yo, I'm moving to LA, we should link up. And once he came out here, it was like having family out here. It was just somebody who gets it, somebody from home and go watch Birds games with. And that really kind of, him along with some other friends, just really started feeling like, okay, LA is home, And, it changed everything, because the first few years in LA were cool, but I just never really felt like settled. But it took a few years.
That's definitely what I was missing, was that community, that group that you felt was like your group. I'd never found that in California. Like you said, like I had Brandon, but then it was like, man, outside of that, like I haven't really found it, and I didn't feel like I could survive without that.
It really does make a world of difference, man. Like we would, Kurt was staying at this spot downtown and had like a rooftop pool. We were out there every Sunday partying at this pool, and I just bring the aux cord and some fried chicken and Coronas, and we just be out there all day. And it was a very stressful time for me working at Blackish at that time. It was just, I was over being an assistant. So those Sunday pool parties just kind of got me right for the week, it made a big difference. And just the friends I was making through different shows, like my homegirl, and this time I was like couch hopping too, because I'm jumping around, but I went to go take a job in Atlanta. I thought I was going to be in Atlanta for like a year, until my boss was like, actually, you're not doing that. Just sit tight and wait for this next job to come. I'm like, what do you mean sit tight? I already gave up my apartment. So for like that next year and some change, I was just couch hopping and shit. And I had never done that before. I was borderline homeless. So I remember living on my homegirl Tracy's couch like all summer, and that was really a big step for me, learning how to write, because Tracy went on to write like Girls Trip, and now she has a show Harlem and all that stuff. So I really got to see her writing process, which made me elevate mine. And she's part of that village too. So at all these stops, all these shows, and all these hardships of couch hopping and being broke, I built that village, you know.
I would have see, I think at that point I would have figured failure. I failed. Gotta like that's incredible that you took advantage of it and moved
Again, yeah,
into it.
you can't I don't know. I was just again obsessed, you know. So yeah, I was couch hopping and broke, but I'm just like, I'm employed though. I'm on shows, I'm around, you know, Kenya and all these people and all this shit. So I'm not far. I'm knocking on the door. So when I was in it, I never realized how bad it was. But now being on the other side of it, I'm like, God damn, like I was struggling, you know. But I had a ball though, thanks to that village. You know, they kept me just feeling safe and like things weren't so bad.
Yeah. So let's talk about Bel-Air a little bit. It's already been completed.
Yep.
What's your experience of one doing this, doing a, I guess like a not a, I guess a reboot. I remember
Yeah.
seeing the original trailer when it dropped a bunch of years ago, as far as like the homemade one, and I thought like, wow, it's incredible, and I was so excited to hear that they were making that. Will Smith was like, yeah, let's just do that. Um, what can you tell me about just that experience, the show itself, what to expect?
Yeah,
What did you go through?
let me start from the top because I love this story. It's just it's really a great. I tell this story to students that I talk to if I'm on a panel because it just really shows how Hollywood works. You know, before I mentioned being in that film independent program and uh, the short film that I made, the editor of that short, my friend, my homegirl Autumn, who's from Lancaster. You know, she had just moved out here, so we were like fast friends. I took her to the Eagles bar. We were watching Eagles games every Sunday and got really close. And then the trailer drops for Bel-Air, the fake trailer. And I'm with her and I'm just like, yo, like I got the perfect script for this. I got to meet this dude. I know this is going to be a show. This is going to be a show like yesterday. You know, I was like, but I don't know how to get to this dude. And she looks at me and she's like, you know, that's my boyfriend, right? I'm like, excuse me? And she was like, yeah, send me your script. I'll forward it to him right now. She sent him my script that I mentioned to you called Outside of Philly. She sent it to Morgan right there. He read it like that night. And then I met him like a couple days later just for a meeting. And he was like, bruh, we're working over this developing the show right now, working with Will, got the showrunner. I don't know when it's going to happen, but when it does, you're in there, you know? So I'm like, cool. So I forget about it. I write on Grownish for the year. I check back, you know, checking in with Morgan from time to time, but I check in with him in August and he calls me and it's just like, bro, you're on the show, you meet with the showrunner tomorrow, like y'all gonna have a meeting and then you're in there. Cool. And then hangs up. Talk to the showrunner and then I talked to Westbrook and Universal and then they made me an offer. And that's how I got on the show. But you know, had I not had that perfect sample outside of Philly, had I not befriended Autumn in that program or even applied to that program, had I not taken her to see the Eagles, you know what I mean? Like none of that shit would have happened. So that's Hollywood in a nutshell. You got to be ready and you got to accept the magic of just shit falling into place outside of your control.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but you have to always be working to make sure that magic happens, you know? So we get on the show and it's cool at the start. And I quickly realized that there's like this three-headed monster of Westbrook, Universal, and Peacock that we're going to have to kind of get these scripts through. And I'm sharing this because you could look this up. It was on Deadline. We ended up we lost the one showrunner that I interviewed with initially. He stepped away from the project for creative differences. And then the next showrunner they brought on, she ended up leaving too. And then two of the co-executive producers who were like the second in command, they got bumped up to showrunner. So it was a rocky start at the beginning because you're trying to nail down the voice of the show. And this is like Peacock's flagship show. So they were really hard on us as far as the notes and just getting that first episode perfect. So those first few weeks, first 2 months were super stressful, you know, just getting it right. But once we got approval for that first script, we just started rolling, man. And the stories were coming in. And that's been the best room I've been in so far, you know, just being able to contribute my POV, all of my Carlton shit, you know what I mean? And then still like pulling in Philly stuff and sharing these personal stories. And I don't know how much of it actually got in. But even just the will stuff too, Philly going to LA and the differences of it, and how that affects you just living here. It was just, I feel like I was just pouring out my heart. It felt like I was on the couch in a therapy session talking about all this shit, you know. And I really hope that it elevated the scripts. And we just had such a dope writers' room with a lot of smart people, man. Like it was, I didn't want to leave. Like I was really trying to get extended and be there through production, but they just didn't have the money for it since they were like churning through showrunners and still had to pay them. There was like no money to extend writers, so I had to leave to go work on this other show. And production is still going on for Bel-Air, but I'd still check in. I'm watching the dailies and stuff, and it's looking great. But by far, that's the best thing I worked on, man. It's just like just the parallel journeys from Philly to LA and all that stuff, and the serendipity around how it happened. Like I can't wait to go back. Like it's a dream to write on that, man. I'm super thankful to Morgan just for bringing me on, you know. And I'm just such a better writer now because of it, because that was my first drama. And I feel like that was supposed to be my first drama. And it was such a great learning experience.
Was there anything that you brought, you thought you were going to bring, that you learned, being that this was like your first drama? Am I correct in saying maybe this is the biggest thing you've done, you've written?
Yeah.
Anything you brought to you thought going in that you learned, oh, that's not right, that's not how it goes, or at least in this place that doesn't fly, and you had to like change or maybe abandon a thought or an idea?
Yeah. I mean, coming from comedy, you have to be a gunslinger. You know, because it's all about jokes and just everybody's fast, everybody's witty, so you just have to outwit the next person. So you just are pitching with a machine gun, you know. But with drama, you're more of a sniper. You know, you have to be a little more thoughtful with your pitches. You have to kind of pitch full scenes and kind of always keep in mind where it's going. What's really have to lead with character. How does this push the character forward? How does this get them to where they're going? So you just have to be a little bit more thoughtful. So I had to kind of slow down on the machine gun pitching and just be more of a sniper. You know, that was the big thing.
Do you still keep in contact with Wissahickon people? I mean, you said it's kind of like dwindling out a bit.
Yeah, it's definitely tougher now. The best man at my wedding is my guy TJ, he wasn't there when you were there. He was a freshman when I was a senior. Yeah. But he's the brother of Lindsay Edwards. I don't know if you know Lindsay. She was on the track team. She was a year behind me, but I've been friends with Lindsay since high school, and we stayed close. So when I was still in DC, her brother had just graduated in 2009, and I was like, "Hey, my brother's moving to DC. Can you like look after him and shit?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." Like I remember him, and we just met and we're like best friends ever since, you know. So it's still my guy. You know, he comes out to LA and all the time. So him and Lindsay for sure, I'm probably closest to. And then my guy, Mike Kalargis, I've referenced a bunch. I don't know. Do you remember Mike? Like he took Japanese. He might have taken Japanese with you.
Okay, I might know him by face. I'll have to look.
Yeah. But Mike and I have been super tight since 6th grade. Like it was on some. You like Demolition Man? So do I. And that was
it. Shit, Demolition Man.
Yeah. He had a recorder, so he recorded it at home on his phone, and he'd bring it to class, and we just listened to Demolition Man, like in Mrs. Watson Bay's class. Yeah, so Mike and I are still pretty tight. Like when I go home, it's like I know I'm seeing Mike. I know if Lindsay and TJ are in town, I'm gonna go see them, and then I gotta go see my cousin's kids, my cousin Dave's kids. I'm like godfather to his oldest son, so those are like the big three, like Mike, Edwards clan, and my godson Malachi.
Okay, and yeah, Tara's your cousin, right?
Tara's my cousin. Yep, we were in the same grade for all them years.
What's it like to have like a side family in the school too?
That was complicated. Tara and I were really tight in middle school, kind of fell off in high school. We went through like a rough patch where we didn't really talk at all my sophomore year, which is pretty impressive considering our lockers were right next to each other.
Right.
Yeah. But then our grandmother died junior year, and we got back pretty close after that. Like I gave her like rides to school all senior year, so we kind of got back in a good place. But then Dave was there too. Dave is my first cousin, and he came what was that? That was junior year.
We're talking Dave
And
Atkins.
Dave Atkins, yep. That was
I love
huge.
Dave. Dave was awesome.
Yeah, man. Like we were like brothers, you know, like him and his brothers lived with my family when we were kids. And then they moved and bounced to like the Poconos and shit, and like we're gone, which was like super traumatizing. Like my sister Val and I come home one day and like, oh, where are they at? And they're like, oh, they're gone. Like, they're what? So it was like spending the next 10 years trying to get them back. You know,
Wow.
they would come visit and stay with us. I remember we would always have all these plans of trying to get them to stay. Like it was freezing cold outside, so we dumped water around their mom's wheels of her car, thinking that she'd get frozen and they couldn't leave. Or we dump a lot of cornbread into the toilet and be like, yo, Dave is sick. Y'all can't go back home. But they would always, we just get in trouble for clogging up the toilet. And Dave and I would always like write to each other. We'd write letters. And then once cell phones were introduced, it's like the late 90s, my parents had like a cell phone or like phone cards. When we started working, we would just get phone cards and we talk every night, all the time, and just dream about like, yo, wouldn't it be cool if we can go to school with each other? So all like 10 years of this, and then he finally comes to school with me. Like, he couldn't tell me shit. I was like, I had my brother there, and I know I lost friends off of that because I was like, I got my boy here. I don't care about what none of y'all think anymore. That's we out kind of thing, and it was amazing having him there. It's just yeah.
I remember I used to in the hallways when we had TV Lab and Brandon was in that, and like we used to hang out with Dave and stuff, and we were doing like you guys really doing a hip hop cipher type of thing.
Oh, you're talking about Brandon's show, the Off the Dome.
Yeah, and like everyone used to hang in the hallways after school and like cipher. And just flow and all that, and I used to love talking to Dave about music. And I remember one time I spit a verse that was from Exhibit off of What's the Difference Between Me and You, from Chronic 2001. But he didn't. It's like that's not like a big song off that album. So when I started kicking it, and it's like my favorite verse in rap. And I remember kicking like the first couple bars, and I was like, yo, I stay with it. Why you trying to perpetrate, play with it? Never knew about the next level until Dre did it. I stay committed while you motherfuckers babysit it. I smash the critics like an overhand right from Riddick. And he was like, that's you? And I
yeah, sure, yeah, why not? Let's
and I was like, oh, I wanted to so bad. Be like, yeah, it's me, because I just knew, like, I just knew that verse so well, and I just used to kill it. And I wanted to, and I was like, it's not, but I could be.
That's so funny. Yeah, I haven't thought about that forever. Yeah, he used to freestyle. It'd be like him and Forrest. I think Maurice Johnson was there. I know I would do the one beat I knew, which was, that was before that time. So it was it was like the Mary J. Blige Jadakiss, because that was before the Clips Grinding, because that was the one of two beats that I know. Those are the only two.
Yeah.
Grinding and then the Jadakiss Mary J. Blige. That's funny. But no, man, having Dave at school was just like, dream come true, because that's something we had talked about for years, Yeah, and we're still like, again, godfather to his son. I love his kids, and I still have a great relationship with them. Like they came out to LA for my episode of Family Reunion, like the live taping. Like they came out and were able to be in the audience for that. And so it's cool being able to share all this Hollywood shit with them. They'd be like, oh, Uncle Hank out there in Hollywood doing it, So it's nice to share that with them, man. He's got great kids.
That's awesome.
Before you ask me about that, I do have to tell you something, though. I do have to apologize. Yeah. Because you've talked about this a bunch on different interviews, and it's something I remember back when it happened, but it's like just immaturity. I wasn't able to connect it. I remember just being in class with you, like the T Lab class we had, and certain days I'd be like, God damn, Brad's being an asshole today. What the fuck is wrong with him? And I was never able to connect it to Ray dying. I was never able, and I remember getting a call from Gina Casanova, who was crying, saying Ray just died.
She was good friends with Kim.
Yeah, she was bawling, just saying, Ray died. I'm like, Ray, I know Madison Avenue. It like was a light bulb that went off, and I ran into where we keep like our photo albums. And I pulled out the old Little League photo of us on the same baseball team.
Yeah.
Right? And that shit just hit me. I'm like, God damn. And I knew that was your boy. But I was never able to connect it. Like there'd be certain times, like, most days you was cool, but some days you would snap. and I would just be like, oh, what's wrong with him today? Like, nigga being a dick. But
Oh,
it,
yo,
I
Hank.
know it was right, man, because you say it like that year, and I remember it was the bulk of the year. You weren't yourself, but I was never able to connect it. But I wish I would have taken the time just to been like, hey, bro, like sorry for your loss, just something. You know what I mean? Because it was just I can't imagine losing. And I'm sitting here talking about how close I was with Dave, and that's how close you were with Ray. I can't imagine losing him. So I don't even know what that experience was, man.
I appreciate you saying that. I wholeheartedly do. I would say that if I were to guess, I was probably just being an asshole. I mean, who knows, right? We were at that age where it's hard to know what your emotional
Oh man,
issues,
yeah,
is correlating to your behavioral actual output. So at that point, I never even would have known if like Miss McCracken talked about also just like when I would have issues and she wish she had taken it a different way, and it's like I never even took it as like I was grieving and this is
yeah.
why I was acting that way. I literally, when mentioning that we were doing this conversation today, I had mentioned to someone that I said that like I feel like I used to pick on you in TV Lab, more of a sense of like you played like you were cool playing like the clown, not like you were a class clown, but like you were cool playing like the one to be picked on, almost like say something and you'd be like I remember you had a crush on a girl in TV Lab, and I'd be like, oh okay, Rico Suave or something like that, like oh okay, got your shit all lined up. I see, you know what I mean, like, but you were like cool, like yo man, like you were like you played along with it.
That's funny.
Um,
I never thought of it as being picked on. I thought it was like just kind of Brad being Brad kind of thing. And I remember I did have a crush on that assistant teacher though. I don't know if that's what you're talking about.
But yeah, I didn't think. I mean, I don't know. It's possible that like every day was like a different day of emotional roller coaster for me. But in my retrospect, I think I just like took you as like someone that I knew growing up, and
Mm-hmm.
looked at you as like the younger kid, and like oh let me it was always like, and that was part of like my black experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you're always trying to knock on somebody. You're
Yeah,
always trying to get a jab in at someone. So I was, and part of my immaturity back then, and I've gotten, I think, better at picking your moments. I never knew how to pick moments. I always just came to my head, that's funny, say it. And I would
yeah,
just say it. And
yeah.
it wasn't
You
always
never had
funny
a
to
filter.
everyone.
Never had a filter. So I think that's why I always chalked it up like, oh, that's Brad being Brad kind of thing. You know what I mean? You don't take it. And I see you do it to the other people, so it never felt personal. You know? Yeah. I remember TV Lab was fun. I mean, it was a good time.
It was a
But
blast.
I do remember just those few times when it felt a little darker from you, and that's why I wish I had the maturity in the moment to recognize like probably going through some shit right now that not even he recognizes he's going through. You know,
Yeah. Worst creative idea you've ever had.
worst creative idea of it. Hey, I wrote a pilot about an ex of mine who was a Carnival Cruise performer. She sang and danced on the Carnival Cruise. So I did this overly soapy kind of Love Boat meets 90210 thing following the performers on this cruise ship. And it was just a lot. I mean, my ex loved it. She read it, but yeah, that shit got no traction at all. I buried that script somewhere. Um, but we were breaking up at the time, so I think it was just cathartic for me I got to write myself as the clingy ex-boyfriend who can't let the protagonist go and be great, you know. So there was purpose to it. But yeah, I think that might have been the worst.
How often are you the subject of your own creative output, your own creative pitches?
Just twice.
Twice?
Yeah, just those two scripts I mentioned. But yeah, I wrote a pilot about my sister Val, um, which I think came out okay. I'm not going to go into details of that. She'll kill
Yeah,
me.
keep it.
Yeah. But I wrote a pilot about my dad too. But it's like I always used to joke on my dad about being an airline pilot. I'd be like, "Pop, we have no idea what you're doing. You're away from here. You could be a hitman. You could be a serial killer." So like, oh wait a minute, an airline pilot that moonlights as a hitman. You know, kind of like Dexter, if Dexter were a pilot, kind of thing. You know, but not a serial killer. Yeah, I always try to write about somebody I know or somebody close to me, except for I just wrote a movie recently. I wrote my first movie, which was an adaptation of, well, not really adaptation, but it was inspired by my boy Justin's story for ESPN about Marvin Gaye trying out for the Detroit Lions.
Whoa,
So,
whoa, wait, what?
yeah, Marvin Gaye tried out for the Detroit Lions way back, and it was such a great story. And I had been sitting on it for 5 years, and I was finally like, no, I'm going to write this. I just wrote it on spec, but I had to do a lot of research for it. I went to Detroit and went to Hitsville and went by Marvin's old house, Berry Gordy's house, and read books on just different people involved with Motown. And I interviewed a Detroit Lions player who helped him get the tryout. And it was the most research I'd ever done for a project. And yeah, just wrote the pilot. Wrote the feature.
And you just did this in your spare time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was in between shows, and yeah, I was hell bent on writing a feature. I wanted to get a feature agent and start getting more into the movie world, because I didn't want to be so reliant on TV money. I wanted to start getting some rewrite money, so I need a sample. So that was my first sample. And it was actually, I was developing it with Angela Bassett's company until they announced that Dr. Dre was doing his own Marvin Gaye biopic for like $80 million with the support of Berry Gordy, and they had like the whole music catalog, so it just killed my shit. But it's still been a good sample for me, and I've been able to get like other opportunities based on it.
Nothing with Dre ever comes out on time ever.
I still think there's room for mine, because I guarantee they're not doing a Marvin Gaye trying out for the Lions movie.
Yeah, that sounds incredible. That could even be a 30 for 30.
Yeah,
you've done. It sounds like you've done like at least a third of the research, maybe more. Like that could be a 30 for 30, which filmmakers get to do.
Sure. I don't know if the guy who wrote the ESPN story, my guy Justin, he's probably already working on that, because it definitely should be. But just the way like that, the story, because the whole reason he tried out, Tammy Terrell had just died. He didn't want to do music anymore, and he was living in Detroit and started going to a lot of Lions games and playing with these guys. And
wait. It's past his prime, Marvin Gaye?
This is like 30-year-old Marvin Gaye.
Holy shit. Yeah. It's like full on Motown star, like booze and drugs Marvin Gaye.
Yeah, sort of. He kind of stopped to get right for this tryout. That's what got him off the drugs and everything. So he got clean and put on like 30 pounds of muscle. Like he was going for it.
And he wanted to play for what?
He wanted to play football. But of course he didn't get it. But this is how he coped with getting over Tammy Terrell. So that's the 50,000 foot view of it. Like everybody copes with death in a different way. And this is how Marvin coped with death. And had he not done this, he wouldn't have gone on to make What's Going On. So we have like this B story of What's Going On being made by, the songwriters Al Cleveland and Obie Benson, who wrote the song and were trying to get Marvin to sing it. So you have the football merging with the creation of the song.
Wow. So that was the rebirth.
Yeah, that was What's Going On was like kind of the rebirth.
On that path, not Motown, but very close, because Michael Bivins ended up running it. But, you worked on New Edition, script coordinator. Is that right? That was the position. When I saw it, I remember you talking about it online, and I was like, wow, they're doing a New Edition biopic? First of all, New Edition was like the group I grew up on. Like as a kid with my dad, like learning the steps, but it had been absent from my brain. Of course, like I always remember Mr. Telephone Man was my jam, and I knew all the classics, but the nuances that were hit in this biopic, the fact that it's I just watched it again this summer.
Okay. And my wife and I, we just watched it like in the past month.
Yeah. I guess probably August, September. I just rewatched it. And watching it again, first of all, for me, like it legitimized BET.
That's real.
Yeah, man, like a 3-part like watch along that people are, that people are live tweeting. That was like the first time I really, like BET had some shows, but nothing that like hit my radar as far as like, oh, I missed out on live tweeting this. Like everyone's in on this. It was just so, I don't know how else to, shockingly not what I ever have seen on BET before. The music, the production, Wood Harris being in the fucking film,
Yeah.
Like everything about that thing. Like, one of those films that when you see it, you're almost disappointed in seeing the actual members of the group because it's not the guys in the movie because
Yeah.
they body that shit.
They-
You they
I
were
can't believe
so
I worked on that, man. Like it
yeah,
was
man. And that's
crazy.
why I was like, yo, Hank is on this.
Yeah.
This is, Bel-Air is like a whole new level. But at that point for me, like I was like, I it's New Edition, man. Like, and you guys nailed it. You nailed it. Like
Thanks,
it
man.
was
Oof, that was a
so
lot
good.
of
The
work.
performances, the vocals, the way that you guys did the recordings,
Yeah.
everything on that movie was just all three parts was incredible.
Thanks, man. It was just so much work. And shout out to Abdul Williams who wrote it over the course of 10 years because this was originally supposed to be done back in like 2006. And it just took a while to close all the deals for the New Edition members and things were shifting at BET. So it took 10 years for this thing to come to life. And he had just been revising that script over and over again, interviewing all the members of the group and, you know, hearing these stories, which some of the group members didn't even know. He would go back to Mike and be like, well, Riz said this, it happened. He's like, he said that? I didn't know that happened, so it was therapy for all of them because, you're known each other for this long, your family, and it's kind of a dysfunctional family. There's a lot of bad blood, but a lot of love too. So Abdul really nailed that 200 plus page behemoth of a script that I had to proofread all the goddamn time. Um, but for me coming into that, like I tell everybody, as far as an assistant, like even not as an assistant, just in general, that's up there one of the best things I've worked on. If Bel-Air's number one, New Edition's probably number two. Because I'd be sitting there doing my work and the rehearsal stage is right next to our production office. And the actors would be in there rehearsing, like the dance steps all day, 12 hours a day. They're in there. And if you have to listen to the same songs on repeat for 12 hours, like New Edition ain't a bad catalog. It was like, if it isn't love, is this the end? Um, what's the other one? Stay in the Rain.
Can I stand in the rain?
Yeah,
Can you
can I
stand in
stand
the
in the
rain?
rain? Like, and you're just on the 11th hour, you're still just like sitting there. If it isn't love, just bobbing.
I'm right now. I was just like in my head. I was just kind of like,
Yeah, you're doing, the dance steps. You're sitting there, shoulder work going. Um, but and New Edition were there every day, most of them. It was like Bell Biv DeVoe was there every day. Like Ronnie, Ricky, Mike were there every single day. Riz was there more often than not. Bobby was never there. I think he had issues with one of the group members, so I think he was staying away. He came 1 or 2 days. Johnny Gill was never there. Met him at the rap party. But
wow.
yeah, but being there every day with Mike, Ron, and Ricky, and hearing these stories, mostly
Mm,
revolving around Bobby, they were just it was so surreal. I'm like, and I told Mike, I'm like, Mike, like when I was a kid and Poison was number one on the radio for X amount of weeks, like my bedtime was 8 o'clock, and Power 99 did their top 10 right before 8, and my dad would come in and turn on the stereo because he knew Poison was about to come on, and me and my sister would run in and be doing the Running Man to it. I was like, for however many weeks it was number one on the radio. And Mike he gave me a hug. He was like, man, I never get tired of hearing that shit, man. Like
mm.
they're such good dudes who are so grounded. Like they make everybody feel like $1,000,000, and it feels genuine. It doesn't feel Hollywood at all. So that was probably the best part, is just sitting at lunch with Mike, Ronnie, and Ricky, just hearing stories.
That's so dope.
And then
Yeah.
Wood Harris, oh my God,
Yeah, man.
like
So The
fucking,
Wire is my favorite show ever.
well, of course. I mean, yeah.
And Avon's just about like my favorite character. I just finished rewatching the whole series last week for the for the 90th time. I watch that show every year. It's just Wood Harris is one of my favorite actors of all time. I know it's Allen Iverson's favorite actor, which makes me feel more emboldened to promote Wood Harris as my favorite actor of all time. Man, just incredible.
He's such a professional, man. He had so many questions for each scene. He'd have questions about the dialogue, which can be annoying with the wrong actor, but Wood was always asking smart questions. He was always trying to get to the root of what the character wanted, what we were supposed to convey in the scene. And he would, we'd workshop it and get the right dialogue to him. But and he didn't really interact with me too much. He interacted with Abdul, the writer. But our relationship changed when he was doing the wedding scene at the end, and he had to give a speech. Now, Abdul couldn't be on set right away because he was dealing with some family stuff, so it was just me there. And they're like, Hank, like Wood needs to go over. He wants to have the script or like his dialogue on a piece of paper so he can reference that as if he's reading off of it while giving a speech. We need somebody to write it down and go over it with him. So I had another assistant write it down. Then I run it to him, and like the clock is ticking because we need to shoot. It's money time. Everybody's waiting. So I'm sitting there. I'm talking to Wood on stage, and he's going through it with me. I'm like, all right, you want to come in on this? And you want to hit these? Like, wait, do I hit this? I was like, no, don't worry about that. Like, come in on that, hit that part hard, and then you can go out on that. And he's like, all right, boom, thanks, Hank. I'm like, all right. And then I look, and all the extras, the crew, director, everybody's just staring at us, right? Because they're waiting to say action. And I'm like, oh shit, Lala Anthony's sitting there cracking up, laughing at my face. And then they're like, get out the way, Hank, we're trying to shoot. So I run off. And then he did it in one take, man. He killed it. And every day after that, he'd be like, yo, Hank, like, what up? And then we chop it up. But yeah, that was probably the best moment for me because it's Will Harris.
Yeah, man. Above the rim.
Man, like, yeah, just and remember the Titans. I like them.
Remember the Titans. Yeah, man. Remember the Titans. Paid in Full.
Paid in Full. Yeah. Yeah, I'm working with Mekhi Phifer now. I haven't met him yet, but he's on the show that I'm on now, so I'm dying to meet him. I even worked something into the script where it's like I describe it as he flashes his watch in the most paid in full way. I'm broke, baby. Ain't got no money. So yeah, it's cool to work with a lot of these folks. Some people who celebs that I had the possibility or opportunity to meet, I try not to because I don't want to demystify it. I want to kind of forever look at them and with fan eyes because a lot of times you meet people and they let you down. But Wood did not let me down at all, man. That's a good dude.
Who are you actively avoiding in the world?
I didn't approach John Witherspoon. He was on an episode of Blackish. I went down to set just to see him, and I was standing at a distance. And I was like, you know what? This is good enough. I don't need to check it. And I heard nothing but great things about him. But even, he just died recently. And I'm like, I'm still good with that decision, man. That's somebody who I just think is so funny. I love everything he does. I wanted to keep those fan eyes,
Yeah. That's cool. That's cool. You still have the whereabouts to kind of still implement that in what you're doing. That you kind of want to still be able to be a fan of some things.
Because everybody lets you down, man. We're all human. Nobody is how you see them. I think Robert Downey Jr. said he loves when he looks in people's eyes and he sees them think like, oh, he's not Iron Man. He's like, I'm just an asshole. Who got lucky. But yeah, some people I just want to keep that Hollywood view of them.
Yeah. What's your not end goal, because this industry doesn't ever stop evolving, but what do you want to, at the end of the day, what do you want to accomplish on your own, do you think? Is it a studio? Is it being a producer? Is it director? Is it being a writer? Is it eventually being on screen?
Well, I had a plan. I'm kind of sticking to it a little bit. I'm making good progress with it. Like my 30s were kind of devoted to writing. My 40s, I'm going to try directing, which is getting scary now because that's approaching. I mean, we'll be 39 in May. So I got to get this directing cooking. My wife is already like, what's happening when you're 40? She's already like, oh, you got to look into this, you got to look into that, because she's already directing. So I'm already kind of shadowing her. She's prepping for her movie she's about to direct. So I'm always asking her questions. So, but it's nice to feel that nervousness. I'm not like at a point now of my writing where I'm like, oh, I've nailed this, I'm done, because you're always getting better. And I always feel like there's something I can learn, but directing legit scares the shit out of me, which lets me know that that's the right direction.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that. But for right now, I feel like I've been doing pretty good with the writing plan. I'm working nonstop. My wife and I, we just sold a show to Amazon. I don't know if I could share that. That's fine. I won't name what the project is, but yeah, okay. I can say that. So yeah, I'm going to be developing that show this year, and hopefully it'll be on at some point. I'm rewriting a movie with a production company right now. And what else? I'm pitching another show with A&E Studios. I feel like I'm right where I need to be on the writing journey, you know. And so hopefully Tembi and I can be co-creating this show soon, you know. And yeah, so I'm good, man. And honestly, the goal for me ultimately is I never want to have to take a job. I know a lot of older writers who have kids in private school and college, and they got to take gigs on bad Disney shows just to pay the bills.
Mm,
I never want to do that. So Timby and I are just looking at how to, you know, just get some passive income coming in outside of this business. You know, honestly, I'm looking at like laundromats and shit down in like Paramount, California, and Tempe. Like we're looking at other properties. Like we just bought a house in LA. We're talking about buying some in Brooklyn next year, maybe some
yeah.
in Atlanta. You know, we never want to feel like we have to work. We just want to do projects that we're excited about. You know, so that's why passive income is a short term goal, and long term is just directing and doing projects that we're excited about.
That's dope. Yeah, let me tell you, my favorite line is "Nobody likes a bragger," but when you say it, like honestly, as just, it's extremely inspirational and like makes me think at any moment like I need to just bang out my shit and just keep grinding on it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know, man. It's just a certain amount of pride that I just seeing you doing projects makes me so fucking happy, man. I can't even like express it to you like how happy as someone that like attempted to get into that world and just seeing not just that you're in it, but that you're working on these projects of, you know, things that we grew up with.
Yeah.
It just like it makes my heart like just happy, man.
No, I appreciate that, man. I hope it doesn't come off as bragging. Like,
No, no, I know. I say it in jest. I say it in jest, but I do like to say that to people when they're giving you too much good news. I go, well, no one likes a bragger. When you say those things, for me, like as those are things I recognize. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Selling projects and working with distribution companies and all that shit. It's just like, and the fact that your wife is in the industry as well, and you've got like these similar goals.
yeah.
That's just like, man, so powerful.
Oh, she is a monster, man. She Michael Jordan in this relationship, man. I'll be happy being Dennis Rodman. I mean, she is just she inspires me every day. The fact that she like I see her in meetings on Zoom while she's breastfeeding our son, and she just like real animated, like, oh, we got to do this shot instead of that shot. Like, God damn, like she's yeah, she's killing it. But we're both. I just like the fact that we're growing together. Like we met when we were both just getting started. Like we got our first writing gigs at the exact same time,
Yeah.
and we just been growing together, man. So it's a great thing. You
That's
know?
fun, man. I look forward to just continuing to look out for everything that you're involved with, man, in any
I
role.
appreciate it, man. Yeah, and if you dust off that script, like for real, like just I don't know how much time you had, but like rewriting stuff, you can submit it to like Austin Film Festival and ABFF and Sundance. Like set those as goals and try to write it and submit it and see if you get any traction. You know, like
I need to do it. You know, when you talk about a lot of those situations where you just kind of have these ideas and you write it and you put it out, it's like I've been in that boat, you know, 400 times and I don't give myself the credit and I think it's just for me and then I put it away again. And I
yeah,
need to just I always think that people in your world in I say it in your world like I can't it's not touchable, but in the world of Hollywood, but like I always think that people in that world know something that I don't. And when I hear you talk about it, it just kind of reminds me of that vibe I had in college of, oh, like 60% of these people don't actually know it's time and opportunity, but the 40% with the real talent, if you keep putting yourself in those situations, at some point
yeah,
you're gonna hit something. Like you said, you know, all these different steps that you've laid out along the way that maybe weren't the bump, but was just a step. I got to kind of keep reminding myself that those things exist and you have to just keep playing the game so that when it comes,
yeah.
you can jump in.
Yeah, it's just I tell everybody it's who can keep their hand on the fire the longest. And for a lot of years, I was just out working the next man. You know, I was like, all right, if I work hard enough, I'm gonna keep working. And that was fine for a few of those assistant years. But then I realized, okay, if I'm gonna move up, the writing's got to get in good shape. Like I have opportunities to move up, but the writing's not there. I think I had like a spec script of Archer. You know, because early on when I was at the game, Mara, who had Being Mary Jane, like we were talking in the game room, and I forgot where I was for a second. I got real animated talking about a topic, and I was like, no, because it's this, you gotta do that, and that's what this shit means. And I see her over there looking at me like this. And then her assistant, well, not her assistant, like the VP of a production company, called me later that day. It's like, hey, Mara's taking an interest in you, and she wants you to maybe write on Being Mary Jane. Do you have a sample? Didn't have that sample ready. I mean, all I had was that Archer spec. So that let me know that can never happen again. I got to get multiple samples. I got to be ready for that moment when somebody sees me, you know? So it's hard work will keep you working, but writing those scripts and showing people that you're worth that investment, that'll get you moving up, you know?
That is my, like, I've got the ideas and I don't ever put in the constant work on the script so that exact situation, that would be my situation. Do you have it?
Yeah.
No.
Great idea, but
I've got it. I could pitch it to you in 4.5, but I don't have it written.
Yeah, because I mean, writing is rewriting too, man. Like a script is never done. Like I'll read stuff I wrote a couple years ago, which I thought was Shakespeare, and I read it now. I'm like, oh my God, I was illiterate. I mean, like, what was I doing? But I love that feeling because that lets me know I've grown as a writer. Yeah. You know, but script is never done. I've been working on that pilot Hitman script for like 9 years now, and I still ain't crack it.
I love that. Yeah. I love that idea too, dude.
Yeah, writing, and that's the big thing with writing is like you write that first draft, like that's a vomit draft. You haven't even really written it yet. You got to get into that, you know, just the revisions, and it just never stops until you shoot it and then you fix it in post.
I never got that, 15 years ago. I remember I used to write shit and like send it in for classes and stuff, and like my professor would be like, keep going. I'm like, this shit is good. Yeah. And then I go back to it a couple years later. I'm like, oh wow, this is so bad. He's like, not quite ready yet. I'm like, I'm about to go to like 110 pages on this. He's like, keep it at 35. Keep it at 35.
Yeah, that's funny.
Well, this is I don't have the exact one, and I got to tell you, I had to do a double take because I haven't seen you in this way in so long. I hope this shows up well here.
Let's see what the hair was looking like. Oh yeah, that's when I started growing. I remember that hair.
Because I feel like so this would have been taken probably the year before, right before, because I feel like by the time I graduated, you had a full fro.
It was like, the fro was coming and going.
Yeah.
Like I had it all through sophomore year. Didn't have it so much junior year until track. But yeah, the fro was coming and going.
Yeah. And of course, being that it's the junior year, I don't have your quotes or your initials that you would have put in there. But
did I sign it? I feel like I signed your yearbook.
Oh, I think you did actually.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. You remember that? Let me find it real quick because I feel like I've looked at this enough times now that I know that you're in here. Let's see. There's Miles in there. I should have pulled it. Thank you for remembering that because I would have ended this and not even. I know you're in here somewhere.
Pretty sure I did. I feel confident about it. At least I hope I did.
Here you go. This is a pretty good entry.
Oh my God! All right, yeah, it's got some. Damn, my writing was forever trash. What can I say? But all right, I'm not going to read it, but at least it was a few paragraphs.
All right, so Brad. What can I say, buddy? I've known you all my life. You haven't changed at all over the years, and I'm glad. I can really, I can recall times I wanted to kick you in your head, but that's just me and you. That's just me. That's just how me and you work. You're my boy, though, and you'll always be my boy. I still want my $5, punk. Good luck after high school. Hank. I don't remember what the $5 was for. I can only imagine.
Neither do I, man. But in thinking with interest, that's got some good bread coming to me. But I'm a little proud of myself. That was a little more thoughtful than I thought.
That was that was it. We had. I'm telling you, the TV lab was like where we spent the whole year kicking it.
Yeah. I remember you mentioned in the senior class show, we sat next to each other.
Oh.
of the Senior Class show because I have the tape, which I still need to convert.
And I'm
But
screaming.
I hear you laughing next to me and yelling the entire time. That's how I always remember you were sitting next to me.
Oh,
But
we gotta.
the second I convert that, I gotta get it to you.
I got a tape too, and like I've got a bunch of VHS tapes I just want to like convert over just so I
Yeah.
have them. So we got to do that. That's my 2022 goal.
Yeah, I mean,
Convert some
Jess
of these
Davis
tapes.
asked me for it like once every 5 years. I'm just like, I'll get to it. And
All right, that's my goal. That's my goal for 2022 to get all these tapes converted and get them out for people to see.
To be fair, I'll be honest, I'm kind of embarrassed to do it because Teenage Hank was like zooming in on all the girls.
I got tapes like that too, man. I got some ones where I know I was like interviewing Amanda Dargy, and I just like went in on the Zoom. And sorry, Amanda.
Oh, that was a good Senior Class show because you had Brooke Johnson doing the Back That Ass Up. I got that too. Yeah,
We're gonna put all this out there.
Wow, I can't believe I just remembered that. I have not thought about that in a long time.
That's great shit.
Last thing, I feel like we've been trying to end this forever. How come you didn't do the Senior Class show? I thought you were going to do it.
Do what exactly?
I thought you were going to be a part of it. I was surprised that you were. Was there any talk about?
It was hard because Ray had died, and I think
yeah.
at the time I was signed up to do. Brandon had done like the dancing through the years of music or something like that, right?
Right.
And I think I was signed up when I think like Coop was in that, and I think I was signed up to do that with him. And then when that happened with Ray, I remember like saying like I dropped out of everything at that point.
Yeah,
I couldn't commit time to anything.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so I just like bailed. I just told everyone like I'm out.
All right,
Well, dude, this has been awesome, man.
Yeah, man. I'm really glad you hit me up for this. It's been cool talking about all this old shit. I hope it cuts together well.
Yeah, man, absolutely. And you know, this is like the first time I can ever say this, like as an official plug. But Bel-Air airs February 13th, right on Peacock.
February 13th. Everybody, please watch so we can get this season 2 going, and I can keep getting paid.
I'm so in on that. Hank, thank you, man.
Yeah, no problem. Appreciate you.
Awesome. I'll talk to you soon.
All right.
All right.